And welcome to the Suggested Guide for Japanese Literacy. This is Nuke Marine. Today, if you look in the lower, well for me, lower left-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see this handsome-looking fellow. It's Matt from Matt vs. Japan. Alright, he's being gracious enough to, or this is a kind of a special stream, in that I'm going to show him the courses that I've kind of developed for the Suggested Guide for Japanese Literacy, the basic portion of it, the first 250 to 400 study hours of material, and my thoughts behind these courses, and the way I want to actually move it over into Anki, you know, for people on my Patreon or anybody who wants to go that way if they don't want to deal with memorize. And it looks like I just lost Matt. Oh.
Sorry, my Skype just crashed.
Yeah.
As soon as you started the stream for some reason.
Alright. There we go. So yeah, let me go and make sure I can share the screen again. Okay, share screens. Start. Alright, do you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so what we won't do is redo the introduction. I like I said, I just do these as live streams. So like I said, I don't like wasting time editing. So these are all stream of consciousness type of live streams of me studying or giving advice or any sort of random stuff. But anyway, the main purpose of this live stream is he's agreed to kind of let me try to explain what my what these courses are for, the main purpose of it, what hopefully the end goal is, and how this can be compatible with AJAT from my argument, and maybe how people who don't want to, let me just say this, let me just try to justify the courses, and then it's up to Matt, since he is, let me just state this, I believe his Japanese level is beyond question. He is literate in Japanese to a native level, he is fluent in Japanese to a native level, both in listening to the language, and in reading the language, and speaking the language, and would I be wrong in saying writing the language?
Yeah, I don't know about native level, but however you define.
Well, if you heard two native people speaking, you understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And could you talk to them over any subject, and they both communicate? Then that's native level fluency, in my opinion. Yeah, they're going to know you're not from the Japan.
Yeah,
we're not talking native level pitch accent perfect pronunciation. All right. All right. So with that let's begin. Now I'm not going to be in the Discord. I'm not going to be taking any. Actually, let me make sure I got this. One last thing. Let's go to my channel. Make sure I'm seeing what that the stream is going fine. Okay. Boy, this is a horrible start to a live stream. Actually, no, I take that back. This is a great start to live stream. This is how it should be done. Just don't sweat it, because I know if I was doing this professionally, I'd be wasting so much time making it look good that I wouldn't be getting any stuff done. And it's because of this is why I finally made those I finally made those kanji videos, because I stopped worrying about how it looked and just fucking did it, and then all of a sudden we got 70 hours of video teaching people how to learn kanji. Alright, so let's begin. Alright, this is based on the idea of stuff I did 10 years ago when I did the suggested guide for beginners on the Kanji Kohi forums, and try and say, okay, hey, here's the stuff we got. In addition to doing AJAT, here's how you can mix and match all the material we thought was really good for the basics of learning Japanese. And that became very popular on the Kohi forums and whatnot. But that's when I stopped doing Japanese. So I stopped Japanese 6 years. For 6 years. About a year and a half ago, through a number of reasons, I got back into Japanese because of, oddly enough, wanting to learn Spanish. But I realized that what Memorize could offer that was a kind of a weakness on Anki's part. So I thought, okay, hey, since this is going to be for beginners, I decided I wanted to put Hiragana Katakana stuff on there. And they got me, well, okay, I've already did that. Let me put this kanji stuff. Well, okay, I've already got this vocabulary stuff. Okay, I can format and put it on there. And okay, let me just go through it and make it better for people, because if you ever did Core 2K, 6K, I don't know if you did, but those definitions, some of them are downright horrible. Like, you can get any number of words and get the wrong answer, because the definitions apply to multiple words. So yeah, I started doing slight improvements on that, in addition to Tae Kim Grammar. So I started putting it on there, but then I started going through them and you know, trying to fix the errors, that actually slowly built my passion about it over time. But soon, you know, last month when I got to watch your videos, all right, and I actually, when I had that conversation with you, that reunited the passion that, you know what, I need to get better at Japanese again. Like, all this stuff here I was covering stuff I had studied 8 to 10 years ago. So this was just covering old ground. But I wanted to make sure I did it in a way that was good for people following behind me who wanted to study this material. They could study a more efficient manner than what I studied it in. Like, they didn't have to find it and find the best methods. Like, okay, I would argue for a beginner, these are some of the best methods you're going to run into. All right. With that said, so let me just say, so first one's going to be Hiragana Katakana. These are all basically the same. This almost goes without saying, but I just recommend it as I created videos following Hazig's book, Remembering the Kana. And so it's essentially 12 lessons, 30 minutes each. The idea: watch the videos, go on to memorize, or Anki in this case, and just do it. Now the idea is how it's going to be tested, as different from here, is the way I want it set up is you hear the word, and these are all what I did is I grabbed 3 example words from the core 2K, 6K series and used those as the example words instead of the words from Hazig's book. So this way you're hearing a native level speaker say the words. So like if I did like a preview here.
In. Ku. Iku. Kun.
So were you able to hear that, by the way, Matt?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, well, you've heard, I'm sure you've heard Core 2 K6.
Yeah.
So those are, do you have any problem with the audio of those native speakers in the Core 2
No.
K6?
And so wait, I'm just I've never actually been through Remembering the Kana, but I'm guessing it has mnemonic type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then how are things actually quizzed?
So the way I'm having it in when I move it all to Anki, because this word memorize screws up because they screwed up the audio courses. The idea is you're going to hear a word and then just write out the word you hear. You don't right now. You're not learning what the word is. You're just learning kana. So can you hear a native level speaker say a word? Can you write out that word in kana?
Okay. Do you have it the other way around too?
No, because I don't care yet. You're going to be reading plenty.
Oh yeah, that's true. I guess.
But the main thing is most of this SGJL, there's going to be audio in everything. The voices in your head should only be voices you've heard from Japanese speakers, not from what you think it is because you only learned these pronunciations in text.
Yeah, that's good. And wait, so you're planning on moving this all to Anki so that Memorize is not part of the process at all?
Well, no, I mean it's either or. I don't delete the Memorize courses. They're going to be.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to now from now on. The effort I spend, if I spend any, for developing a product for other people, is going to be on the Patreon and with Anki.
Oh, okay. Because for some reason I thought that you were using Memorize because it's like more user friendly, and you were planning on having people always start with Memorize, and then you would move them over to Anki or something.
No, it'd be either or. So if you're comfortable with Anki, go with Anki. If you don't want to fight it yet, start with Memorize. Yeah, it's up to the user, and then maybe they get comfortable. They realize, okay, hey, I want to be doing Anki. So yeah, so basically, Hiragana Katakana is going to be hear the word, write it down. All right, it's going to be usually 2 or 3 real-world Japanese words from. Then it's only going to basically every word you learn is only going to be either that kana or the previous kanas that you've learned. And starts with Hiragana and then Katakana.
You're telling them to actually get the pen and paper and write it out.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yeah, and although if they don't, hey, that's fine on them. But if you're going to get writing practice, this is a good time to start your writing practice. All right. All right. So that's Hiragana Katakana. Any problems with that? Do you think with a course like that? Hear a word, write the word out. About 250 words per course.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. And by the way, on here there'll be like what this word means in Japanese, like kun, Japanese reading, but you don't memorize that. If you do, okay, but if you don't, no problem. That's not what the course is testing. So but it's also a course you can quickly get rid of.
Yeah. Also, you know how written fonts in Japanese can look pretty different than printed fonts, like handwritten fonts. And on Anki, you can get fonts that are in the style of handwritten fonts. So if you were going to do that, I would recommend having both.
Gods, yeah, I would have that's the good thing about the book. If you've ever seen, remember he actually gives 6 different fonts for each character.
Yeah, well, you can set that up on Anki if you
Yeah.
know how, or if you're making pre-made decks for someone, you can just do it for them. So.
Right. And I'm not going to do that. I'll let them do it. If I can, I can do it earlier. Okay, so that's Hiragana Katakana. Next bit of... Maybe I should keep this screen here. Okay. And by the way, the other reason I had these split up into smaller courses is I wanted to prevent beginners who have that bad habit, say they want to do an entire course. So like they want to do all of core 2K, 6K, 10K, or they want to do all of remembering the kanji or all of grammar and whatnot. And it's like, okay, no, wait. This is for working adults. I want you to make sure you're increasing your level at an even amount, because you're going to be listening to Japanese, especially if you're a working adult. You might not be able to study as fast as someone who has a lot of more free time. So, but you hopefully can have a lot of ability to be listening to Japanese a lot. So, that it's very important to have a much more even increase in level across the entire spectrum, not just in one area.
Yeah, and it's also good in general to prevent, because I think when people have never used an SRS before, they don't understand the repercussions of learning a lot of new content at one time.
Right.
And because they don't realize how much reviews it's going to become. So they feel like, oh, I can just do 50 new cards a day and memorize so much cool new shit, and then they get eaten alive with the reviews.
Right.
So it's probably good to have them.
Usual recommendation I add to beginners, and I try to stress that, is like review first. So have a set time what you're going to say, especially an adult. If you're going to have 2 hours set aside to study, all right, do the reviews first. Whatever time you have left over of that time you set aside, then you study new material, and you balance out the review to study time, the reviewing of old material and the studying of new material. That becomes really balanced.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so next thing up, and this is where you and I might disagree with, but it's remembering the kanji. Now this is, actually we discussed it before, and it sounded like you kind of agree with the concept. Instead of, again, for a working adult, instead of spending 150 to 200 hours learning the 3,000 kanji as you recommend, which is a good idea if you're going to be immersing yourself in the language early on. That is a good idea. But let's say you're a working adult, all right, you want to make use of that 150 to 200 hours as early as possible because you're going to be listening to Japanese. The way I set aside is, okay, learn 555 kanji of the 555 of the most frequent kanji, and learn those in the RTK order. And that's what I got here. And this is very simple. Show the, let's give me further down here. So let's say lesson 21. So the way this is set up is you learn it by, actually there's a video series I made. Do you know about my Remembering the Kanji video series?
No.
Okay, so that's on Core 2K. I won't, I'll tell you what, let me just, I guess the easiest way to do it is go to here to the Kanji at Kohi forums. So I'll bring that up. Go to Remembering the Kanji. And down here, Remember the Kanji Optimized Video Series. And I did about either from 30 minutes to an hour or something during my live stream, and I covered every single kanji in that series to teach people how to write it. So here's one for example. Here's from lesson 20 or 21. Let's see if this pops up. I don't know if this is gonna crash me or not, but let's see if this works. So, but yeah, this is all through a live stream. So I actually do it through timestamps. So it's like, this is like 9 minutes in or an hour or something. Begin. Here's the introduction. And next kanji, I think one more. All right, so this is Shuku. So this is like a Shinjuku. Is a city in Japan, very popular. You hear the Shinjuku Dai Koseten or something like that. Large crossing in Shinjuku.
Oh,
sorry, but okay. Movies when they try to cover Tokyo, show that over in Tokyo.
It took me a while to realize there's probably supposed to be sound.
Name of that. Let's see, Yado. Oh, Matt means also during the live stream you won't be able to see this. There's a relay station. I'm sorry about that. To dwell or lot somewhere. Are you recording this? There, look at that big pregnant.
Me?
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
I was until my thing crashed.
Oh, okay. All right. You'll be able to put. I'll tell you what. You got full rights to this video from my stream. Okay.
Okay.
Do what you want with it. Shukudai.
It's all good.
Unusual. Okay.
So basically, you have the 500 most common kanji, but then in high six order, and then I'm guessing you had to do some work to work around the radicals to make it, and like the primitive elements to make it work.
No, I just kept going. I just went through the book, and there was a radical on it. And if I felt like, oh, it's been a while since that radical was seen because it skipped over, kanji that it ended up that route was being used later on because the one that was being used on got skipped over. I just brought it up again in the video. No big deal.
But like, isn't there some instances where, like, for example, you know, sometimes in the original RTK, a common kanji might be learned like towards the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like there would be some instances where normally when you learned it in the original RTK order, you would have like already learned two components that are combining, but you didn't know the components, so you just have to memorize it like in its combined form.
No, but you also learn the separate components, so I still address it, like, and the stories here that I constantly readdress those components in the storyline, in the stories given. So, like, if you didn't for some reason, I mean, well, obviously these parts for Juku is, you know, you learned house, Batman, or person. Batman is my person, by the way, and 100. Yeah, there was a couple of cases where it skipped, but and that's a good thing about the videos here is that because I've gone through the entirety of RTK before, and I knew kind of what was being skipped because the idea behind these videos was I was teaching it on the U.S. Naval Base in Japan, teaching it to people in a classroom, and that kind of got me get the notes needed for teaching an abbreviated course on what was being skipped or not, and I provide that. So I actually created like little PDFs that are we don't see it here, but you see it in do I have it here? But yeah, I provided little PDFs in the course, in this course, that actually helps with that. And at least for the first 36 lessons, like for the first, all these lessons, people have, I think for beginners, they have what's missing or what they need that would have been, they would have missed out. And then on the second time you go through this, you know, it should be no problem. You should already be familiar with it and be able to figure out what you were missing. But this is the first 555. And again, I looked on the numbers. 500 people have completed this course, and I haven't heard any complaints from it. So what they're doing, whatever it's doing, it seems to be doing right. Now, Memorize, unfortunately, I couldn't have it. It doesn't have the did you get it right. They want you to click on an answer. So if you ever seen the preview for this, like if, actually let me just let me exit out of this real quick. Pause and exit. If you see the preview, it gives you like 8 multiple choices, so I recommend to users like cover up the choices, write it out by hand, then look for the answer, you know, as a way to test it. If you feel like you
and then if you didn't get it wrong, you purposely choose one of the...
Oh yeah, if you got it wrong, purposely choose the wrong one. Which is because you knew, and it's kind of weird because you know by sight, oh man, I messed up. But because your knowledge of visually recognition, you realize is so strong, if you saw it, you know which one is the right one. But you know, hey, you and I know, hey, you know what? I'm going to make it harder on myself. Now that's the beauty of what RTK will bring, and that's the beauty of what and that's actually the kind of cool thing about Memorize versus what I saw with Anki is that multiple choice, there are some benefits to having multiple choice. It isn't that, but for people who are aware, hey, I'm not asking you to only use multiple choice, think of the answer, and then with multiple choice I'll just put it this way, it proved useful for the subsessor S portion, but don't worry about that.
Okay, well, you can make multiple choice type stuff in Anki.
Okay.
It just takes a little bit more manual work, but...
Okay. And personally, though, I think now in hindsight, the multiple choice is a nicety, not a necessity, and I would the strength of Anki is better anyway. But this is still a functional course. I do recommend if people use it that they cover up the answers, write down the kanji, then look at the answer, and then decide for themselves if they mark for wrong.
It's always keyword on the front, and then you're producing the character yourself. And then
it's actually more than just keyword. Like, tell you what, let me show. Let's do a quick review real quick. Just show it. So this is actually what you'll see up here. Now, what I normally do is I'd shorten the screen, and so I'd only see the top part. I don't even accidentally see the answers. And then, so this is used, but not Mochidu or whatever that is. So that's Kao. And so I know it's Batman and C-3PO, you know, with his mouth being covered. And this part is probably I can avoid looking at this. I mean, but this gives you the answer in my opinion. But
oh yeah, that shouldn't be there. Well, if you have the primitives, that
should be a hint. But a way I figured out, you know, I like the idea. Like I hated the idea of you missed something because you didn't understand the keyword. Like you knew that kanji, you knew how to write that kanji from memory, but you didn't know it was to that. You mixed it up because of the keyword. So I tried to go through.
Well,
and
I mean,
I had
no, like
this.
how you have that thing at the top right there, the not mochiru, that is good. I think that's really useful. But the how you if you have or if those are the radicals right there that create the like
Yeah, it would suck. I'm saying if I were doing this in Anki, I would have this be the like matched up against the background. You can highlight it if you need it, but
oh yeah because I mean if you needed that like even
you
if
might
you
as
have
well
it as a
missed
hint
it.
right
Yeah.
yeah because in real life you're not going to be given the radicals.
But the other benefit is that you have these radicals because you kind of want to have those as a reminder as to what they are. So that's good. This would have been great on the answer side of things, but I couldn't show it on the answer side of things. So
Okay. Well, so
that's where memorize is limited. And
if you
Anki is
change
superior.
that on if you change that on Anki, then that would be a more ideal thing.
You are correct.
That's it.
And by the way,
And
down
then the-
here are a bunch of actually more words that mean. This would have been actually a lot more information, not just the keyword.
And then so people are normally using like the story. They're not probably coming up with their own stories, are they?
It's up to them. I mean, they can use my story or they don't. It's up to them.
Because like what I find with people who a lot of people I've talked to and like people in my Discord server, so a lot of people have really bad retention rates with RTK, especially once the intervals start getting more mature. And I found out that the people, like some people will drop down to like 70% retention rate or something, and most of those people, they didn't spend a very much time creating their stories or like really visualizing their stories. And I found the people who really, like, I don't think it's that important whether you really create it yourself or not, but I think it's better if you do. But the important thing is that you really visualize it and see this kind of scene in your head.
And if you saw my videos, you'll see I'm actually doing exactly what you're telling. You're
like I just want to make sure that you like encourage people to not be lazy about that, because people get lazy about that and then they forget all the kanji and then they say RTK doesn't work.
Right, or they depend on word mnemonics. I call them visual mnemonics. These are pictures or stories in your head, not text. Like so for here, in fact, I still have, for some reason, it's because back when I was doing movie method and Reliance, I just know this is E because of, I'm still remember the scene from Mr. Incredible where, although I'm now using Batman, but it was just about the no capes. So I put anything with the onyomi of E in the movie Incredibles. So that whenever I thought of that kanji, I immediately thought of the movie, which immediately made me think of the onyomi of E. That's a side story. Don't worry about it. But but
okay.
Movie method, it works, but I just don't recommend it. For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But you kind of see here, I see keyword, and then this is kind of also what it also means. So because sometimes people don't know what, especially in RTK, a little weakness is he doesn't describe the word, that kanji, in really good detail. He just gives it just a single keyword.
That's fine. I have on my RTK cards personally another field just for defining what the keyword means, because a lot of times people just have never heard the keyword, and so I just put the definition, like the English definition of that word. So it's basically what you have there, which is good.
All right. Okay. So no problem with it being now.
Yeah.
Now you may disagree with the whole do all 3,000 kanji. I'm saying
no. Okay, I can address that now. So
okay.
Yeah, like after you explained it to me and I kind of got what you're talking about, I think it is pretty valid in its own right, because it is less optimal. So, like, if you were, I was talking about this with someone else earlier today. If you were like given the scenario where you had 18 months to get, or maybe let's say 2 years to get as good as possible at Japanese, and if you didn't get to a certain level, then aliens were going to come and destroy the Earth, and so it was all resting on you, and you wanted to do the most efficient thing possible, and there was like, whether you were going to be able to stay motivated or all that stuff, it was not part of the equation, then I think it would be most efficient to learn all 3,000 kanji straight up first thing, because it's going to be optimally most efficient to learn them in that order, and I think getting them out of the way for like multiple other reasons is the most efficient thing. But I also recognize that is extremely difficult to do for a large majority of people, and many people they quit somewhere along the line. They just can't get to the end because it's too boring and too stressful and the reviews are too much. And so I kind of just get, for a lot of people, that's just not realistic and it's not happening. And so you're kind of making a compromise in sheer efficiency in order to lower the threshold of how much it's going to take on your part, like mentally, to get through the process. And I think that that's valid for like a lot of people.
And the other reason would be this: when I was doing it, it was like 4 to 6 months. Actually, it was 4 months just to get through all the stories. Another 2 months after that to get the spacing down to 30 days for 90% of the 2,000 kanji. But what I realized, because I was a working adult in the U.S. Navy, active duty, so I had to use my free time. But I was able to get about 3 to 4 week break there. So I did a lot more studying on my vacation time during that. And we were in the what's called an availability period, so I had a lot more free time where I wasn't working like 10, 12-hour days. So I can, instead of just doing like an hour or two of study, I could do 3 to 4 hours of study. So I was able to get through the kanji a lot faster during that time. But let's say I didn't have that; I only had the 1 to 2 hours days. All right, do I want the 200 hours where it's all just kanji and I haven't actually learned Japanese yet? Because I lived in Japan, I walked around, I see these kanji, I was getting immediate feedback that what I was doing worked. Because I was, all of a sudden, everything was comprehensible. Train stations made sense and whatnot. Even if I didn't know it in Japanese, I knew it in Heizig kanji. But not everyone gets that feedback that I got, unless you know. So,
Yeah.
And the other thing is, so what I realized is, then this was later on, hey, take these 555 most used, and then start learning vocabulary and grammar. And then go back to learn more 555, then more vocabulary and grammar. And because I'm a working adult, we're going to go with the age idea is that, okay, hey, you're going to be listening to Japanese a lot. So you're going to start listening to Japanese back in Hiragana Katakana. That's 6 hours. But you're going to be also listening to Japanese for the 40 study hours you're here. And by listening, that's during the work day. You know, when you're in that, maybe an American environment or work environment, or when you're exercising or about to go to sleep, about to wake up. That's listening to Japanese. I don't want to make sure, because the study time is going to be drawn out. The number of hours is the same, of study hours is the same. But it's spread out over such a longer period of time, you have to start getting a lot more benefit from that listening that I wasn't getting because of the way I'd initially structured it. Because I did it the AJAT way of learn kanji first, you know, learn some basic grammar, don't worry, sweat grammar too much, just start learning vocabulary and sentence mining. But I was, again, a working adult, so that was taking over months at times when I was listening to Japanese, like near 24/7 like you did. But I hit a point, and again, that's going to be later on in the story about where that click happened. And that comes to the reason why I had everything set up in this way is I want to get everyone get a benefit from listening as early as fucking possible. And right now we haven't learned any Japanese yet. We just learned Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji. And we've already spent 43 hours. So now we're going to go into the part where we're all of a sudden we're this stuff, and now we're going to start learning Japanese. That's the next course.
Okay. Well, what I'd say to conclude about the kanji right there is that yeah, if you changed it to Anki and you made it so that there wasn't multiple choice and you didn't have the hints on the front.
Yeah.
And also I would add multiple fonts so you see what it looks like handwritten, because sometimes they look pretty different.
Mm-hmm. And that could be, that's an image. Is that a image file or is it a font?
It's just a font. It's just a font, a normal font.
Okay. I think I know what you mean, and that's easy enough to do, and that's easy enough to set up, because you're basically going to show the kanji 4 times, and each one in a different font, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And on the actual fields of the card, you only have to have the kanji once. Just in the code, you put the same, like, field 4 times, just each one with a different font.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and that's where I and you who are familiar with Anki know how to set that up. Someone who's unfamiliar may not have realized that. So
yeah. Well, I want to make tutorials in the future pretty soon about how to use Anki, because I think, you have to become proficient in the program, which is an investment, but I think it's really worth it. Like when you think about learning Japanese in the long term, because you're going to run into your own personal problems, and you're going to have to come up with your own personal card formats to kind of fix those problems. And I think being able to actually know the in and outs of the program is going to be really valuable.
Right.
Because of that.
I will add one more thing. There was a course I did. Let me. Now this is a bonus course. So this is not a learning course. This is a confidence course, I guess would be, I'm not sure a good word for it. But the idea here, you're probably not going to see it, but let's say I do a review here. The idea here is I took the core 2,000 words, split them up, and basically it's going to be by kanji and onyo and yomi. I didn't care if it was a kunyomi or onyomi, I just cared that it was a yomi attached to that kanji. And split them out, put it in a spreadsheet, or organize it. So I created something like this, and let me just show you how the review works. It should be kind of obvious. So you've got something that's G, G-show, and Oseiji. And and let's see the two words like dictionary, complement, or flat. Well, okay, I shouldn't have done that. Sorry. That was a bad idea. I should only use okay, so this is either the word for dictionary or the word for compliment or flattery. All right, and so it's this kanji here for G, correct?
Yeah.
So if I did this, could you write the correct kanji?
Oh yeah, you should be able to.
All right, but you have to know Japanese to do it.
Yeah.
So this is not meant to study. This is meant as more of a confidence that after you finish 2,000 vocabulary words, you should already know onyomi and kunyomi intuitively.
Yeah.
And again,
Okay.
this is what I want to
So
make.
so this thing isn't actually to teach people anything. It's just to like show you your own ability.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I could end up doing this for fun. And this is where I think Memorize, if they changed it up and allowed it to say, hey, I don't want to learn this. I want to activate the whole course and just make it into a review game. But Memorize doesn't allow that. So
Oh, you can do that on Anki.
correct. And yeah, so this is house, right? Right there, or what? One's house.
Man, that's so ridiculous that they force you to do multiple choice though. Like, it's not even an option.
No, I could have had it to where you just type it in, but
Oh, okay,
You
good.
can't.
I was gonna say memorize.
But then you'd have to forcing people to do an IME, and that you're making them take longer time than if they just cover up
so
the
it's-
answer and pick it later.
So it's either it's like literally they have to type it in or multiple choice.
Right.
There's no just like you just show the answer.
Correct.
That's really weird.
Yeah. But again, for beginners, it's who don't want to probably are very uncomfortable with Anki early on. It works fine. And again, this is where I want to do with Patreon. If I create stuff like this now, I want it to be for people who have, probably I'm making more use of my effort because I think I looked at the number. No one really cared about this, but this is kind of a fun. This could be a fun game to show people.
Yeah. And the other thing, now that I think about it, is if you made the pre-made decks on Anki, it wouldn't really be any harder to use because if you're not making any cards,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to really know anything
Right.
when it comes to how to use Anki.
Yeah, there you go. That's true. And in fact, all this stuff originated with Anki anyway. But the thing is, though, when I made changes or improvements, everybody saw the improvements. They didn't have to re-download the deck. Because there's no synchronization option anymore with Anki. It used to be early on, you can have a synchronized deck, but that's no longer the case. For good reasons.
Yeah, that I guess that is a downside, but
But there's some good reasons for that, because, you could be giving some rogue HTML to people.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's Hiragana Katakana. Okay, so you're cool with this setup. Not necessarily something you'd say if you want to go full age at, but as a
But something I
compromise.
was just thinking about is, it is really interesting when you think of when you're going under the assumption that they have very limited time, and so because the way I think about the more traditional version of AJAT that I did is it's going to take you 3 months to get through RTK,
Right.
around there, a little more, a little less, and you're doing listening that whole time, and the first step of listening when you first start listening to Japanese is just to basically allow your ears to adjust to the sounds and learn to hear the phonemes, and so whether you know vocab or not doesn't matter at all. It's just like to get your ears used to it. But at a certain point, you'll kind of exhaust that, and to benefit further from listening, you'll probably have to do some active study. You know, and so it's interesting to think that if your RTK study or like your total time, if you're splitting your total time today between like listening and RTK, and so you have some kind of ratio where you max out the listening, what you can benefit from only while listening before you finished RTK, then that is going to change the efficiency. So it actually, now that I think about it, if you're going under this kind of scenario that you're talking about where you have very limited time a day, it actually could be more efficient to do what you're talking about. Hypothetically, I don't know for sure if it's true or not, but it does make sense logically to me how that would be the case.
Now, one thing I'm testing with is with that Listening Studio Advanced. The gentleman who programmed Subsess or S, he could also create a program called Listening Audio Studios or something. Or I actually forgot the. Let me see. Audio Lesson Studio. There we go. Actually, let me open that up. And the idea here is I'm going to use this program So the first thing I want to do is like take all those words from the Hiragana Katakana one and put them into a Pimsleur-spaced audio repetition. So you list all 500 words, but they're all going to be spaced out Pimsleur-wise. So hear a word, you're going to hear it 10 seconds later, 30 seconds later, 2.5 minutes later, 12.5 minutes later, an hour later, 6 hours later. It's going to be in that spacing. And so all these words on repeat. Now you don't know what any of these words are, but the idea is like you're listening. These are words that you at least got introduced to through Hiragana Katakana course, and you hear that on repeat. So it could be something like I think it's like 1 to 2 hours of audio. I'm not sure, I haven't made them yet. But it's native audio, just hearing words. And that's boring.
And when in the process would you do this?
Right at the beginning. Basically,
before you even start the Hiragana course?
No, while you're doing it. So I was like, after you finish these like 3 hours or 6 hours, I'm just going to give you this audio. This will be for Patreon guys, but just give them the audio clip, and just if they want to listen to it, listen to it on repeat. Just kind of like till they're bored with it.
Well, if you're talking about the spaced repetition, then it's like it has to be the optimal amount, right? It can't too much would actually like defeat the purpose of the intervals.
No, it's not about writing down anything. It's just listening on repeat.
No, I know, but it's like with the Pimsleur thing, it's like they're spaced out because the space is important, right? Like it seems like it's designed to get this thing that you've never heard before into your memory, right?
But I'm not doing it for memory. I'm just doing it for listening practice.
Well, then it kind of seems like why don't you just listen to native audio just to let your brain start chugging away at trying to figure that out.
The reason is I want comprehensible audio. So this is audio that you've been introduced to. So you know that you've heard these words and you can parse these words. So now it's like kind of like when you study. This will make a little more sense. The main goal is to get to this part here, to native audio from Core 2K, and even this is, you don't want to depend on it. It's actually a race to get to the subs to SRS, where you're actually going to be listening to native dramas on repeat. But if you can't parse that yet, okay, let me step back. Again, it's going that limited time for listening. You know, what I did wrong in that first year, I was listening to incomprehensible audio. I wanted to learn. I was learning Japanese, but the audio I was listening to it all the time wasn't comprehensible, and I wasn't developing comprehension of it through a lot of listening. And I didn't have a lot of time to sit down and watch Japanese TV like you had recommended. But that's going to be part of the process. But I want to make sure during that listening time, make sure what you're listening to is comprehensible, because you're going to get a lot more from that. That was from personal experience. It's when that click happened is when it turned out, when I put comprehensible audio into that mix.
But like at the very beginning, if you're just listening to random sounds, right? You don't know, like this is why you're learning Hiragana Katakana, so you don't even know what they mean. That's not really comprehensible, is it?
In a way, you know what you kind of know. You know how I said I gave the information of what the word means. You know, so if you're studying, if you find the word, I keep hearing this, then maybe you learn what the word is. Okay, hey, all bonus, because you're going to be doing the reviews of these while you're learning kanji. And so maybe during a time like that second or third time you reviewed it, you know, maybe you said, oh yeah, helicopter. Especially when you get in katakana, you're going to be hearing a lot of loan words. So you're going to know what these words are just by hearing it. But you're going to hear how Japanese say these loan words, because all the katakana ones are basically all loan words. So
yeah.
So
I don't know.
At least that benefit. It's not the best. It's not optimal. I get that.
I kind of just I still just feel like listening to native. Audio is the best because you're not going to comprehend it, but you just got to allow your brain to start getting used to it before. You're probably right. I apologize. This is a thought experiment. I haven't implemented this. Okay.
This is a thought experiment, and so I wanted to create that, have people try it out and see what they're thinking, and then. But you definitely are correct. You need to be listening to regular Japanese audio. That has to be a part of the listening. But I want to throw in that mix, comprehensible audio. And right now you're limited to just this, but later on we're going to be adding other comprehensible. All right, so the next two things, I'm not going to go over all 4 courses, but I split them up into 4 courses. So it's Tae Kim and Core 2K. Now, Core 2K is optimized Core 2K, which is a little bit different. And I think people have used the term optimized, and I was one of the few people that I think on the Kohi forums that came up with the concept of sorting the Core 2K deck via vocabulary, and it actually was easier to learn that way. So we're leading that. So the first thing is Tae Kim. So let's bring that up. And unfortunately, this is the one where it just sucks as a you know, as an I couldn't figure out a way to make these work with Anki that I felt comfortable with. So I just tried to say, okay, these aren't spaced remember cards. These are spaced reminder cards. So this is reminding you of grammar points. That's it. So it's not about all these you can get right because it's multiple choice. This is where multiple choice is actually more effective. Let me just show you what a review looks like. So when studying it is going to be, I did Tae Kim videos. So what I did is I went through all the Tae Kim on my video. So I actually read through the entirety of Tae Kim and kind of explained a little bit more, like where I thought he was kind of weak on the explanation, add more clarification. So yeah, I created about I want to say a 40-hour video series covering all of Tae Kim for people to follow. So they're not just going off the book. And also what I did is I went through in all of his vocabulary. Let me exit here. So what I did is I split up into sections. First thing I introduced was vocab. And the vocab I used Core 2K where possible. So when they learn this, you're going to, and it's testing from English word and through multiple choice, but the same idea. You can cover up the answers, try to think of what the Japanese word is, and then click on the Japanese word. So it tests like that. And I found that works out great. Learn, because most of the other decks for Tae Kim didn't include the vocabulary. And so that made things a lot easier. And I made sure also is like the audio came from Core 2K, 6K if available. Otherwise I use text to speech. And also include, you know, anybody can go onto the Tae Kim website to get it, so that's no problem. And then for the sentences, it's testing English to Japanese. Again, not effective, but I want to, way I would encourage for this, how would you express this English sentence in Japanese using this particular point? And to me it sounded, okay, that's not a very good, that's not good, because now you're forcing someone to be creative, and for one, there could be more than one way to express stuff in Japanese.
Yeah.
So here's where multiple choice. Here's where I think multiple choice actually shines.
But why would that be better than just having the Japanese sentence and just understand this Japanese sentence?
Hence the multiple choice.
Well, I know. Well, yeah, but I mean, so right now you still have English on the front, right? And then
yeah. I didn't want people looking at 8 different English sentences trying to find it. I like the better. Here's an English sentence. Where's the correct Japanese sentence?
Yeah, okay, well, let's just imagine for a second that we were on Anki instead of Memorize, and so we didn't have to choose multiple choice.
All right.
And so we could do multiple choice either way. So we could do it this way where, okay, you have an English phrase and then 6 possible Japanese phrases, one of them are right. Or you could just have the Japanese one, and then the goal is just to understand it.
All right.
And then you check the back, and it has that.
Yeah, the best would have been, I think,
English
close delete. Personally, I think the best is close delete with maybe 3 to 4 choices in that option. Especially with grammar, like, hey, should this be hito ni, hito de, hito o? You know, which would be the correct choice? Not just the particle, but the word and the particle. And based on the surrounding sentence, there can obviously only one of those could be correct. If you knew Japanese, you knew only one of that would be the best. Here's the problem though. That's Shinkanzen Master Grammar, not Tae Kim, and that's why for Tae Kim. I'm saying I'm making a compromise out of a bad situation.
Yeah.
Shinkanzen Master didn't do N5. They only did N4. They started N4. So that is a damn good book series, right? I found out, but it's not. They don't have it for beginners. So I can't make that book available for beginners because they're going to be as the very first thing they run into Japanese.
Well, I think when I did Tae Kim, what I did was I went through his guide, read all the explanations, and then I just made sentence cards out of all the example sentences, every single one. I just put the Japanese on the front, and then then the English translation and whatever, the grammar point explanation if I thought I needed it.
On the back.
And because I think the whole beginning stage of learning Japanese
that's good.
is learning to understand it, right? Like your goal should be you should be forgetting production, right? Like Tae Kim is not a tool to help you produce Japanese. It's a tool to help you make Japanese more comprehensible.
All right.
And so I think you should format your cards the same way. And okay, here's a sentence, comprehend it, and then on the back it has everything you need. So, and you could do it with the vocabulary as well. Like just have the Japanese word gakusei, and then and then be like, okay, what does that mean roughly? And you can try, because I mean, of course, raw basic vocab isn't ideal, but when you're very starting, it's like, what else can you do? I get it, it's inevitable, but
All right. So here's where I think again, but if you didn't do that, or the problem has been maybe they feel like they need to perfectly translate it, and they might mark themselves wrong when it's like, no, don't worry about getting it picked perfect. Is it? Do you understand? Does he get the general meaning? But here's where I thought it comes in. But anyway, let's just do a quick review and just show you what it looks like. So we got this right here. Now this is the to particle. So, which of these? So really, it's just going to be, hey, just reminding you, hey, that's what the sentence means. That's it. And then when you click on it, you're actually going to hear the text-to-speech audio. That's pretty much it. It's not meant to be hard. It's just meant to be, hey, quickly reminding you about those grammar points and you're not even meant to fail them. These are all meant to be passed real easy. Just quickly remind you again, since you spent time studying this grammar points, at a spaced interval, remind you of those grammar points. That's it.
yeah, I think that's fine. But I still would prefer my way, because when it comes to SRSing, my principle is always practice how you play. So think about how are you going to actually need to use what you're learning in real life, and then try to replicate that scenario with the SRS. And so I always think that what you're going to need these grammar points for is understanding Japanese. Okay. So you should just make cards where your goal is to understand Japanese. Right. So, but I still think this will work. It'd be fine.
With memorize, the limitation memorize, this works because you didn't want a Japanese sentence with 8 English sentences, because I felt I was reading too much English. But here,
I don't think you want multiple choice at all. I honestly don't really get how multiple choice could ever be the ideal.
With memorize, this is right. Memorize was set up that way.
Yeah.
But now, so you are right. So if I set these up on Anki, what I'm going to do is, like you're mentioning, here's the Japanese phrase. Do you understand what this means in English? That's all.
Yeah, and you can just emphasize that you shouldn't get caught up in the wording of the translation because it's not accurate anyway, and blah, blah, blah.
Correct. It's like there are many ways of saying it. This is just one of the ways. Did you kind of get this gist? Did you get the gist? There you go. All right, so that's, when I make these onto Anki, it'll be back the way it was. And don't stress about that you can't say something. It's not about using these grammar points to make Japanese sentences. This purpose of these grammar points is to understand Japanese sentences that are going to be coming later.
Yeah, pretend that you're learning a dead language or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, perfect point. But dead language with a shitload of audio. So audio, the text-to-speech audio, I think, is really important for this, personally. So, in fact, what I would do, even one step above, then I would show the Japanese sentence and I'd play the audio at the same time. And then that way they're not using the voice in their head to think what it says. They hear what it says from, text-to-speech is the best of a bad situation. If it's native level audio, that would be better, but that might come in later. If this Patreon kicks off, I might be able to, do you know of any audio for Tae Kim already out there?
No, but I haven't looked, so.
Alright, same here. If it exists, I'd use that, and if not, I'll probably pay someone and have it done that way and make that available. But again, that would be for Patreon members, because like I said, this is functional as is. Boom. All right, so no sweat. And for memorize, this set form is the best of a bad situation. On Anki, we'll make it better.
And I just say that with the audio, I think, of course, it's better to have the audio than not have it, but it's not detrimental because, you're going to be listening to thousands of hours of native audio, so hopefully that will be corrective enough. But, of course, it can't hurt. And it is not, and it tends to, and in my experience, it tends to make it easier to remember when you hear it.
Plus, it's more fun. I'll be honest. I enjoy like copying this. I know you say you don't copy. I copy. So when I hear this, and it's like hon to zashi to hagaki o katta.
Hon to zashi to hagaki o katta.
Hon to zashi to hagaki o katta. It's a computer voice. But I did a male and female version of the voices for people to hear. But that doesn't matter too much.
No, I think, I just want people, because some people really stress about it, and they, spend hours and hours trying to make sure they have audio on their cards, when really it's more like if you have it, that's a luxury, and it's nice, but it's not detrimental if it's not there. That's just all I wanted to say, so people don't get too anal about that.
Right. And plus, it's so easy to put audio on cards now. For me, I don't think about it. It might be difficult for other people. So that's where, hey, if I'm going to make it, you're going to get audio, and that's the benefit of Patreon thing. All right, and by the way, this is why that whole year of me was just a pain in the ass of me making these courses, because I was making this stuff work for other people. that was all. You know, and fighting memorize, it just became a pain in the neck. All right, so let's leave this site.
And then wait, so are you going to show me the 5K one too?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
Okay. Or the 2K, whatever.
Yeah,
6K.
2K. So that's
whatever K.
So the reason why I put Tae Kim first, and I'm actually going to change it for Anki. Before it was the beginner Tae Kim, and then 500 words, and second half of Tae Kim, second part of Tae Kim. Basically, split Tae Kim into 4 parts. What I'm going to do is actually put half of Tae Kim. You're going to learn the first half of Tae Kim, and then you're going to learn 500 vocabulary words. Then the second half of Tae Kim, then another 500 vocabulary words. And the reason for that is because of later on, because of this course here, the Shinkanzen Master Grammar in 4. When I get to that, I think you'll appreciate what this is doing. But let's talk about vocabulary. All right, so this is core 2K, 6K. Now, this is one of those things where if this did not have audio, there would be better courses than this. Because this is one of the few courses that has native level audio for the vocabulary and the sentences, and it was accidentally released under Creative Commons in 2008, despite what I know says. Okay, they're trying to claim they never released under Creative Commons, that it was just but no, they did. Because of that, that's why this is so popular and shared everywhere. So it was a mistake on iKnow's part, because they thought they were going to make a profit off of advertising in their SRS systems. They didn't realize that actually they had just released one of the best learning aids for Japanese for free.
And wait, well, I always wonder this. Why is it called 2K, 6K? Is it 2,000 or 6,000?
2,000 words. The first is core 2K. That means the first 2,000 words. Then core 6K is the first 6,000 words. So that's why it's 4,000 words long. It brings the total up to 6,000. So 10K brings the total up to 10,000 words. Make sense?
Wait, say that again?
Core 2K is the first 2,000 words of the series.
Okay. Yeah.
Core 6K then adds another 4,000 words, making it the total 6K, 6,000.
And then there's another one?
10K. And 10K is just, again, K for 1,000.
Damn.
Have you ever played RuneScape?
No.
Oh, okay, so if you played
but
RuneScape...
I know K thing means 1,000. But.
Right. And so, yeah, so to me it was like it's just a given. Now, the problem was these vocabulary was developed from 10 years of Asahi Shimbun frequency list. So that meant they put a lot of, what they did is they put a lot of newspaper terms in there that are not actually common spoken terms in the day-to-day world. All right. If I went back in time and I could, with the material I have now, what I would do is take from that JP Subbers, where they have like hundreds of Japanese subtitles for hundreds of shows, and say, hey, look, and use that CP 4690, 4960's Japanese text analysis tool, and say, hey, look, here's a scan of these these thousands of subtitles, and here's the top 2,000 words. Do those words first. Okay, I would have given, and I think you would have had a much more effective beginner list, basic vocabulary list. But it doesn't matter. The list could be improved upon. However, the audio can't. I don't know. I don't think the audio has been improved upon yet, and it's been 10 years, correct?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay, you haven't looked. I'm saying I have looked. I care about stuff I can share freely with other people.
Yeah.
And because, stuff hid behind paywalls, they might as well not exist. Most people aren't going to use them.
Yeah.
And Rosetta Stone fucking sucks. So it's not even good for free. Okay. So what I did is with this, I did a couple of things. Those 555 vocabulary, or those 555 kanji, I used those in a program that sorts vocabulary words by a kanji list. And I ran, so first thing I did, so I ran, I grouped these into sets of 2,000 words. So the first 2,000 words, basic 2K, core 2K, basic. Next set of 2,000 words, the first half of core 6K, and then the second half of 2,000 words, the second half of 2K. All right, so that's grouped frequency. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so same thing we happened with RTK. We took those 2,000, we had 2,000 RTK kanji, we took a quarter of the most frequent, and then sorted those. So what I did is now take these 2,000 vocabulary words, and I'm sorting those with those 555 kanji. But the kanji index I use is not RTK. It's from a book called 2001 Kanji Odyssey. Have you heard of that book series?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you may or may not, you may agree, you may disagree, you may not even care, but that index, the book is not useful because it was teaching vocabulary words using kanji in kanji order, but they were showing you words that use kanji that happened later in the book. So it was kind of fucked up. It's like, why are you showing me this word? You haven't even taught me that kanji yet. There are books that teach kanji in that sorted order. I think who cares? I think Kanji in Context or something does something like that. But this program does it automatically. So I took those 2,000 vocabulary words, I sorted them with this kanji index, and the kanji index, here's how I got it. It's the 2001 kanji from the 2001 at Kanji Odyssey, then all the remaining RTK kanji, so up to 3010, and then after that is the Ken index kanjis. So I've got an index list of 6,336 kanji that I use to sort any vocabulary list. And all the words at the top use the most common kanji, and words at the end use the most uncommon kanji. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we got that. So I got a list of 2,000 words, all sorted kanji index. And what I did is, okay, I wanted the first 500 words that are either Hiragana Katakana or use one of those 555 kanji in that sorted order. Cool. And that's what we got here. So by the end, so if you look at it, let's just look at the vocabulary real quick. And if you see how the vocabulary, like slowly, like here, let's, I don't know what, let's see if it's got a good example. Like here, they finally introduced Gakko, or the one for school. So it's Gakusei, Daigaku, Daigakusei. So you got Chugaku. So you basically got 4 words using that same kanji. So it's definitely I+1. So it's either a new kanji, or it's actually that kanji used in a different word. And the other benefit is that it groups intransitive and transitive verbs together, which are really useful to learn those verbs and those verb pairs together instead of the old Core 2K list separate them. So I found, yeah, that's really useful. The other thing it did is, you get to see onyomi and kunyomi of kanji, like right near each other. So you get to kind of get the gist of, okay, how they're both using it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, how are the cards actually formatted?
Okay. And all right, let's do a review. So this is how you study. This is how you actually review it. So, all right. So it's high school, senior high school. Now this kind of gives it away, tall exam, but you need to type in the answer. So gakko, or not gakko, kokosei. Well, yeah, koko. So they have to type it in Japanese, by the way. So yeah,
gives you a hint right there.
Well, yeah, but that's not really a good hint because you need to say this in Japanese.
Yeah. Okay.
And you hear now this is the vocabulary portion on it. The way I'm going to do it in Anki, because it's very hard to make the changes to here in Memrise. It's going to be the Core 2K sentence closed deleted, and then the a very smaller font, the English definition. So hopefully you can get it from the closed deleted sentence, but if not, there's the English definition, and you need to type in the answer. So that's the first half.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay. And if you think, hey, these hints are too much, but what I think the useful thing, and this isn't in this one, but I created a word format. So if it's like right here, this is chugakusei. So this will say 3K, which means 3 kanjis, or it could be 1H, 2K, 3H. So 1 hiragana, 2 kanji, and then 3 hiragana. It's got to be that format. So it probably means it's an honorific as opposed to like if it's saying father and it said 1H, 1 kanji, 2H. They're asking for otosan. Or, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And the reason is I want to get away from the idea you can have multiple words that are a correct answer, but you don't know which one they're really asking for.
Yeah, yeah.
So I get rid of that.
That's why I still think, you could just have the Japanese on the front and then just make the goal to read it and recall what it means.
I did that when I first started, and it turned out I didn't have as much grasp of the vocabulary word. I got a really strong grasp of vocabulary words. And then the next part's going to be, you're going to be tested on a word twice anyway. So this is the first one. This is active recall. Next one.
Oh, you have it both ways?
Yeah. So the next one is going to be, and I'll give you an example. So anyway, you cool with this? Let me
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And it's not going to have this. This is a memorized bullshit here, but yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Chugakse. And the school here is like you got to know how to pronounce it properly because you have to type it in. You have to know how to pronounce it properly. So you can't shorten the. Like you can say Chugakse. It's got to be Chugakse.
Well, if you don't cheat, because IME actually allows you to cheat, because you could check Chugaku and Chugakse, it could be right there. You could press tab and get it. But if you're diligent about that,
Yeah.
中学生
And what I'll also add is the pitch accents to Anki to make that a bit more obvious as well.
what do you mean by like in
Well,
what
there's a
form?
pitch accent field. I don't know. If there's another field for it, I'll add it. But I'm going with the one.
Well, I
that-
just mean like what kind of notation or like
I honestly don't know how to interpret the notation. I'm going off.
because actually I'm actually kind of thinking that introducing people to pitch accent first thing probably isn't a good idea.
Okay.
But that's another thing we can go into later
Yeah.
if you want.
I don't have to introduce it, but I can add it, and so it's there later on if they want to utilize it. It's kind of like the information
Yeah,
added
yeah.
to Hiragana Katakana. You're not meant to learn it, but if you want to, it's there.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. I've just found people who like too early on they kind of start thinking about pitch accent too much, and it kind of just slows them down because it's too much to worry about as a
Okay.
complete beginner,
And that-
and you
that-
already have enough to worry about. You
And
know?
for me, I'm more of a mimicker. I want to hear it. If I constantly hear something, then I know if it sounds right or not. I might not be saying it right, but if I can know I'm hearing it right, kind of like ikuda and ikuda, you know those are two different words. But
Yeah.
early on,
Yeah, I
didn't-
think that's probably the best option when you're a beginner is just to give them audio. Yeah, and not try to worry them about this other abstract notation.
Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do, and this again for Patreon members, I'm going to take that list because it already has pitch accents. So I'm going to sort any words that have the same pronunciation. I'm going to actually create a little challenge deck. So it's not a learning deck; it's a challenge deck. So you're going to hear that. You're going to hear those words 3 different ways, and you're going to have the word written out in Japanese. So it'd be like ikura and sono ringo wa ikura desu ka? But it's not going to. You're not going to hear it. You're going to read it, and you're going to hear ikura 3 times or 2 times or however many times, and each one's going to be a legitimate word. But you have to. Your answer is going to be which of those was correct.
Yeah, it might be hard finding sentences that allow for the synonyms.
Core 2K.
I mean, for the
Core 2K. Core 2K 6K has that.
with the.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, like I said, I'm just. If it,
Because I'm just thinking like koi.
Uh-huh.
There's the fish,
Uh-huh.
and then there's love.
if
I'm
it's
trying
the
to think,
same
like-
pitch accent, I'm not going to do it. If it's got a different pitch accent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's how I'm gonna see if that works. Now again, this is just a thought experiment, but I realize
Yeah,
I can do that with the spreadsheet and what Core 2K 6K gives me.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you take like for like ame and ame, like rain and candy. Could you? It's probably going to be difficult to think of a
Ame.
sentence where
Well-
it'd be natural for either one to go in.
And we'll find out. Because like I said, you're gonna hear the 3 words. Now, if it turns out it fails, who cares? I didn't waste any
Yeah.
time. I can do that in Anki like that. I just gotta
Yeah.
change the spreadsheet up to make it that effective. I can't do it in Memrise, and I'm not going to do it in Memrise. So again, these are I'm realizing, hey, okay, there are things I can award Patreon members now that they're going to get something out of it that before I was just doing it for fun and giving it out to everyone and no one gave a shit about. But now I'll have this group of people that really care about it, and then we'll start making use of it. All right, so let me show you the sentences real quick. Let's see. Pause and exit. Or save and exit. All right, and so the next one, so it's always learn the word first. Now this is going to be, it's going to be a little different here than what I'll be doing in Anki.
父はおみ
Shush. Now you can't hear this, but
このクラスの生徒は30人です。
そのクラスの生徒は30人です. So you actually hear that. Now in Anki, here's what it's going to be. You're going to hear the word 生徒. And then you're going to hear このクラスの生徒は30人です. And what you can do, it's only going to be audio. And you can be, now it's up to you to decide as a person, can you picture those 2 kanji in your head for seito? Okay, and that's pretty simple. So it's just life and, or cell, and then Spartans on the run, you know. Well, and this, I'm sorry.
このクラスの生徒は30人です。
Yeah, so Konakasu no Seito, and there's Seito. So there's Cell and there's Spartans on the run. So if I had pictured that kanji in my head correctly, I would mark it correct. If I didn't, I'll just write it down real quick, mark it wrong. And so this way I can actually have, am I hearing now, or I don't have to do it, or I can just do it for do I recognize it? Do I comprehend what this word is? Both from hearing it and hearing it in context of a sentence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so then how are you going to do it on Anki?
Just that. It's going to be audio, the audio of the vocabulary word, and then the example sentence for that vocabulary word. And then the answer is going to be this right here, in this written out.
So what exactly is the task going to be? Like to
It's up to you.
just...
It's up to you. I'm going to give you. You have two options. One is you picture the word in your head. So that way you make sure, hey, you're using the. And that's harder to do, but I think that's fine. I think that's legitimate, because if you can picture a kanji in your head, most likely you already know how to write those kanji down, because you've already tested. You got another course teaching kanji. You don't need to keep writing down those kanji over and over again if you already know how to write kanji. This is so you make sure you write down the correct kanjis for you know the correct kanjis for that word.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
And so
you have two things. Can you pronounce this word from memory by knowing it through the context and the definition? And then the other test is going to be, can you know what this word, you know what kanji uses, or know what this word means, and what kanji goes into this word from hearing it in context.
Okay.
Cool? All right. Can you see that as being functional as an Anki deck?
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is, like, you don't get any practice actually reading it, but...
No, you get, well, I mean, that's going to be happening when it comes out. I mean, you mean about the sentence?
No, I mean, like say on Seito, you never get any practice getting presented the kanji and having to recall what that reading and what the meaning is.
I think if you can recall what it is from memory,
but
you know how to read it when you see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily true, but it does tend to be the case. Because, I mean, that's kind of the principle of RTK. Like, you only have to produce them, and then you'll be able to recognize them.
Yeah.
So, I think that's fine.
I see your concern, and you are correct. I mean, when I first started this, I wanted to hear it. Do I know what the sentence is? Then I read the sentence out loud. So you can do it that way. Just read the sentence out loud. And you'll be doing it through repetition anyway. Who cares? Cool.
Yeah, okay.
So you are going to see the word and you are going to see the sentence twice. When you wrote,
yeah,
when you wrote the
I
word
think
down,
in reality it'll probably be good enough.
Okay. Awesome. All right, so you're getting them warm and fuzzy on, at least for people going at the beginning. You know, it's not the way you would do it, but it does sound functional.
Yeah.
All right.
Up until this point, I see that you still have a bunch more decks, so I'm kind of wondering.
It's all the same. It's just
it kind of seems like how
instead of doing 2,000 words of vocabulary, instead of doing all the grammar and then all the vocabulary in bulks, I just spread it out a little bit more on the idea. Those first 500 words are the 500 most common words. Those first 500 kanji are 500 most common kanji, and the grammar is the most common grammar. And so get you through those groups fast. And now, pretty much, if you're listening to Japanese, you should be comprehending more and more of what because you should be watching Japanese as well. So more and more of what you're watching and hearing is becoming more and more comprehensible. Because right now, in your path, if they try to do years as a working adult, they've been doing they're probably still on learning kanji. They haven't even learned Japanese words yet.
Yeah.
But now they've learned some basic grammar and they've learned some basic vocabulary. And they're at the 100-hour mark if they've finished at this point. Like they're at the halfway, they're already at the quarter point. And
okay,
that's I'm trying to get at least that part, because now I remembered, like, when and this is going off memory of when I was doing HAT. It was okay. I was at 2,000 kanji. I think it was Understanding Basic Japanese Grammar, that book that Katsumoto had recommended, and then that kind of. I didn't get a warm fuzzy out of that. I got halfway through it because I helped with the transcription on it and whatnot. But then I did all of Tae Kim, and that's when I watched. Last Friends. That was the first Japanese drama I watched all in Japanese, using Japanese subtitles, and it was like a really exciting time. It was like almost like a milestone event for me. And I wrote Katz about it and whatnot. And he gave his all usual praise and whatnot. But it was realized though I didn't have weak. This is before Core 2K came out. Core 2K got released that next month, and then I realized, okay, I've got to, I need to build up my vocabulary. That would make things easier, and it made my watching of dramas easier as I increased my vocabulary. But without the grammar, without the grammar to kind of tell you what these words are doing to each other, it was kind of a mess. I was misunderstanding, what the sentences are trying to convey. I understood the individual words, but not what the words were trying to do with each other. So that's why I wanted to make sure growth is balanced. my kanji was just so fucking strong. I was getting comprehension from the subtitles that it was, but not because of Japanese, just because my intuitive knowledge of kanji at that point. So it was like I was like in a very unbalanced mode. But because again I was a working adult, my studies time was stretched out over a longer period of time, even if the total study time wasn't that big. You know, when you put me at the 400-hour mark, that doesn't sound like that much, but if that's an hour a day, that's 200 days. That's almost over a year. That's close to 2/3 of a year. All right. All right. Let me just back off real quick and okay. So let's go back to. Let me see. I make sure here. All right. So some things I'm going to do different with Anki. Tae Kim is going to be shoved up in this first half. So by the time you're done with this point right here, SGJL 7, and that should be about 100 hours worth of study time. You should anybody should have about 555 kanji under their belt, 1,000 vocabulary words with sentences, about 780 Tae Kim's grammar sentences. So you're done with Tae Kim grammar. You're done with, you're done with that. And also at this time, you should have been listening to a lot of Japanese. So that's the hopes, is that, hey, are you listening? And then what I'm also going to release, and I don't know if it's going to work or not. This is one of those, again, thought experiments. But take these sentences here with the audio and just put them into a listening course, just so you can listen to it on your free time. Just to get, since this is complete, comprehensible, 100% comprehensible Japanese audio, this is stuff you need to be listening to a lot. And a lot. Not just depend upon the SRS, because that's just making sure, hey, if you're actively thinking about it, do you know the answer? Now I want you just constantly listening to comprehensible Japanese. Completely 100% Japanese.
Yeah.
And at this point here, I would say if you wanted to, you can go straight off into sentence mining. You can go into AJAT land right here and start doing pretty good. Like, hey, start getting that next set of 555 kanji and then start sentence mining. Or finish off the rest of the kanji if you want to. Because now at least you got some basic comprehension of Japanese. While you're studying kanji, during that time while you're watching Japanese, you now comprehend a lot more of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So this could be an exit point where, hey, you know what? I'm going off into AJAT land completely, 100%.
Yeah, it kind of seems like that should be more than enough.
Right.
But I guess it really is just a matter of some people, for lack of a better term, need to have their hand held a little more, just because it's scary to go out in the real world of Japanese, and so it's kind of, if you just kind of admit that, yeah, that the purpose is just to help people feel more comfortable for when they make the jump into the deep side of the pool, even though it's slower than if you would just suck it up and go cold turkey. Then yeah, I guess it can serve a purpose for sure.
And like I said, this is an option. But let's say, hey, you know what? They liked what they're doing. They can continue on. It's pretty much the same thing, although what I did is I added this right here, Shinkanzen Master. I'm going to split that into two and put them right here on 9 and 11. And I think if you've seen Shinkanzen Master, you might like what they do, because it's all Japanese. Shinkanzen Master, that's all Japanese. There is English in the book, but the course I put, there's no English at all. It's all in Japanese. You haven't seen this, I assume?
No, I've never heard of it.
So let me just show it to you. Exit out of this thing. All right. So everything here, the Core 2K, it's the same thing. It's just split up into four parts instead of doing it all 2,000 words at once. Because here's why, by the way. When I was going up with Kanji Kohi, you always heard you had those guys that wanted to study. They didn't even want to stop at 3,000. They wanted to go all the way up to 6,000. And it's like, are you going to study Japanese words at any time? I mean, I get the kanji is fun and all, but you are learning this for Japanese, right? Not just kanji for in and of themselves. Same thing happened with vocabulary. They want to learn they want to finish Core 10K. It's like, are you gonna read any Japanese books or watch any Japanese shows yet? No, let me study first. Then what? Why? I mean, I get it. You do you, but I think there'd be a better way of going about it. If that makes sense. That's why I wanted this all broken apart, so that they could feel a lot more comfortable jumping off and doing the real shit, which is AJAT. So I'm teasing them into AJAT instead of dumping it right on them. Okay, so let me save an
Yeah, yeah.
exit.
I guess you're kind of tricking them into it, which is a good thing because that's the only way they're going to do it. I guess for
Because
some
this is
people.
a sentence, and they know now. There's an English definition. There's an English to the sentence, but I'm not showing it. But if they miss it, they can always go back and look. And the English is on the card, but not in the reviewing on it. It's in the learning. So that's the idea. You can use English to learn, but don't use English to review. If you do, if at all, okay? Especially in the beginning. Later on, you can get rid of English entirely. You know, you start using Japanese to learn Japanese. All right, so let's get out of here and let's go to that next part. So let's show you that Core 2K. I'm sorry, Shinkanzen Master Grammar. Now, I did spend time doing this. I put the entire Dictionary of Basic Japanese Grammar as a deck, and I did have it there as recommended, like as a part of the system. And then I said, no, fuck that noise. I just made it all, okay, hey, it's a bonus deck. If you want to use it, go for it, but I don't recommend it. The only thing I liked about it, I was learning names of people and places from the sentences.
Yeah, but that should be a pretty low priority, and you should be doing that after you've already been weaned off of this kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, or when you get into sentence mining, you want to do that anyway. Hey, if that's a place, that's a word learned. If it's a loan, and a thing I noticed, like maybe age-adders are guilty of, they tend to be dismissive of loan words. Do you think that's true or not?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are, but I'm not. Well, I mean, I think it's the kind of thing where the better you get, the more your priorities change and the more your standards change. So at the beginning, you're just trying to understand, like to get the gist of whatever you're watching or reading, right? So yeah, loan words are going to take a back seat for a while. But then once you start getting more advanced, you get to the point where understanding isn't a problem. You're just trying to, perfect your knowledge. Then yeah, you got to memorize. You can't think of loan words as having any relation to their English equivalent. You got to think of them as, their own thing entirely.
Amazing. It is a Japanese word.
Yeah, and not even... Because I think when I try to pronounce for that kind of katakana words, I pretend that it's written in hiragana. Because if you notice, like, your brain goes into a different mode when you see hiragana word than a katakana word.
I have to see it in katakana, that loan word, now. Because I'm reading so much. Like, it's... my brain's made the collocations already. Like, if I see it in hiragana, it's like, what is that?
You actually just look at the sounds, and it's not related to your English understanding of the word.
No, I'm saying, like, I'm looking at the kana, like in katakana. But if you show me that same word in hiragana, it's kind of like if you showed if you showed something in italics or in a decorative font, all of a sudden it's harder to read because you've gotten so used to, just like that whole mix. By the way, do this. I tell you what, take that mixed up word thing, that one that they take English words and mix it up, do it on a different font that is still legible, but it takes effort to figure out what each letter is, and you'll find out they can't read the words as easily.
Well, because it's like your brain has a database for each word, and if you change it sufficiently, it doesn't register that it's the same.
But remember,
thing.
you posted, like, if you just change the position of the letters, you can still read the word. But if you change the way the letters look, all of a sudden that doesn't work anymore. Try that. Try that as an experiment. I could be wrong. I'm just. They did that test when they ask word problems. If it's in a normal, easy to read font, people got it wrong. But if we made it a harder to read font, so they had to think about what they were reading, they got the answer right.
Yeah, makes sense. Because
I guess you got two paths of the brain. You got the quick one, the thing that makes you survive immediate because it thinks so rapidly, but it can't work on new stuff. It works great on stuff it's familiar with and comfortable with. That active part of the brain works on stuff that's new and unfamiliar, but it takes so much energy and effort to utilize it. All right, enough of theory. Let's get back into it. So this Shinkanzen Master. This is this right here is just fun. Like the first 9 lessons is conjugation of verbs. So I think I put this on a Discord, and I gave this a Discord server. I link it sometimes, but yeah, you can pretty much do that where it gives you a verb and tells you, hey, conjugate it into this format. Like, for example, come on. Let's just do a review. Like right there. So it gives you this, and you have to type it in. Like, so it's shiaku no, or Shieki. Goddamn, I know it's Shieki no Katachi. So it's Kuru and Shieki no Kitachi. So I'm horrible at this right now, but it's let's see. Sensei wa gakusei o junmei.
Kosasemashita.
Kosase.
Kosase.
Kosase. Okay. And oh yeah. Yeah. But anyway.
先生は学生を事務室へ来させました。
Yeah, I don't know if that going to that level is necessary because it seems like
It's it for fun, just making sure you're comfortable with conjugation of verbs, And
yeah, I guess for people who want that extra.
now for your guys, like for your AJATers, what I would recommend is like, hey, do this as a confidence course. Can you take this course after about you're at the 2,000 sentence mark? How well can you do with the answer to these questions? These are fill in the blanks, or selecting from multiple choice. So if you're passively good at grammar, this should be. You don't even have to know why it's the right answer. Just do you know the right answer? That should be fun for a confidence course. Come on, levels. So like again, so this is you. You're super good at this. So this should be no problem. You don't even have to study. You haven't studied grammar past Tae Kim. All right, you just intuitively know these rules. So for you, and this is in 4, so this should be like real basic stuff. So I already know you know this stuff, but so the first 9 lessons are conjugation. So you should be okay with that. And I don't know. I don't think there's anything wrong with practicing that, but that's up to you on AJATers. I think, but it is a good thing to know. If you're going to study grammar, they're going to cover. Hey, do you remember from Tae Kim how to conjugate all these verbs? Or
Yeah,
verbs,
well, I
adverb,
think the
nouns.
way I approached it was like Tae Kim tells you what's possible, right? Like okay, there's a causative or whatever form. There's a passive form. There's a conal. Forget what the English word for that. The potential form.
Mhm.
And so,
Also,
and then
potential, okay.
yeah, you know exactly. You know roughly what they look like, right?
Mhm.
Like, okay, the causative one has a lot of sasus in it,
Mhm.
and the passive and the potential has a lot of rarus in it.
Mhm.
But maybe you don't know exactly the rules for like what types of verbs are or whatever. But you just kind of like.
And you start
All
getting
you
to feel
need
like
to know-
anything ends with a su is kind of like a do verb. It
Or
feels
you can
they-
rely, you can rely on Rikai-chan and stuff for a while to help you just know which one it is, but then kind of like, you don't actually. I never actually memorized like the rules to like deduct what the final conjugation is going to be. I just kind of through inputting, I was like, okay, this is probably this form. I'd like keep track of whether it was like what are those 3, the causative, potential, whatever, and like what, or if it was a combination. Just try to keep track of that, and that was like enough. So.
Yeah. But I tell you what, like for your guys, it's just I just typed up the book, put it in there. I'm going to split it up into 2 parts. So it's going to be do part 1 and part 3, because part 3 is actually in 5 grammar, but they're giving more examples of those grammar points and more exceptions, like when to use de or when to use ni, when to use o or when to use to, when to use wa versus ga. So I think for that's useful. And you should say, hey, do you got enough? Have you intuitively learned this enough over your, let's say at the 2,000 sentence mark, which I think is a pretty good milestone for AJATers, right? 10,000 is like the main goal, and you've gone way past that, obviously. But if you want to set up milestone markers, 2,000 sentences sounds like a pretty good milestone, right? And just say arbitrarily, say, you know what, that's the N4 milestone, 2,000 sentences.
Or just out of curiosity, do you like not want to not address people in the chat at all?
I'm ignoring them.
Okay, well, can you make it so I can't see them what they're saying? It's like distracting.
I apologize. I can't because it. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, that's a couple guys talking shit. I understand. Okay. I wasn't going to address that. I forgot that you could see that. I'm used to everyone just only seeing the stream area. All right.
I can kind of address some of them. They're obviously not listening to what we're saying at all, and just guessing what we're saying and then complaining about it. But
okay. Oh, they're not. They're complaining about me, not about you. I'm hoping.
One guy was complaining about me too.
Oh, fuck him. All right.
Yeah.
No,
they're criticizing you for not saying why would you trust someone who hasn't gotten fluent. But that's like the whole point of this thing, right? Is because I'm fluent and I'm like giving my opinion on it, right?
And the way I look at it, I'm not teaching Japanese. I'm teaching how to learn Japanese based on resources I've heard people recommend. So because Katz had recommended some of the stuff, that's why I gathered it.
Yeah, same thing.
and that's why I wanted you, because like Subsessor S, I gave that link to Katz, and he put that "My world is rocked." You know, he just realized like how cool Subsessor S is. The guy, when the guy made that, is like, okay. Now I don't know if he used it that much beyond that, but but yeah, but just for fun, these are all in Japanese. It's all fill in the blank. Let's say this right here is the final. Let's say the final quiz of everything, and I wasn't planning on reviewing this, but yeah, sure. Like right here, this was, if you ever take JLPT, which I know you're not, this apparently is a JLP style question where, hey, all these 4 words here have to be put in the correct order, and then tell me the word that start out. So,
that's just a test question.
yeah, that's a JLPT test question.
Yeah, like, I don't know, I really just don't like these, because I think that, like I said, SRS, you should practice how you play, so I think you should
you don't have to do this as practice. This be a confidence thing, just for
okay,
fun.
yeah. If that's all you're doing, then yeah, that's fine.
Now, for me,
But
I'm recommending my students to do this, like, because again, they're going slower by having a more active knowledge of grammar. It's going to help them with the comprehension of their listening and their reading a lot faster. So then I have the intuitive. I'm trying to shorten the intuitive period. Like, you will gain the intuitive knowledge eventually, yes.
Yeah,
I'm
but
trying to shorten
even
that.
so, even if you want to get just be doing grammar more consciously, I would still just have it where you have actual Japanese and your job is to understand it, because that's what you're going to be doing in the real world. So it might as well be like practice the way that you're actually going to, like, because Japanese isn't going to look like this when you're out in the real world, right?
Correct.
So why don't you just have the same exact grammar point, just all in Japanese, and you just have to understand it. Or whatever aspect of it, you can make a note about what aspect of it to pay attention to or something. But
what I liked about this, and like this is just one example. Let me see if I can even bother to answer this. This has been a bit. So it's been 6-month break since I. So 私たちが会ったすぐに友達になりました。Okay, 会った始めたのに、その時があったのは始めたのに、その時がすぐに。So it should be その時が。その時が。And it's typed in just for, I mean, and I was wrong, so good. Okay. No need. Alright, who cares? Alright, that's just an example. It's just one.
This is a weird problem. I'm not sure how much the ability to answer this is going to correlate with actual Japanese ability.
But here's actually what I think is more fun. Like, hey, here's a question, here's 4 choices. Alright? And it's not more about knowing what the right choice is, it's, do you know why the others aren't right? Like, why would this not even be there? I mean, type thing. You know, and if you know it intuitively, that would be awesome. You know, type thing. I don't know. And if you feel like, hey, you know, you wouldn't recommend that, that's fine. All right, and I'll say that, hey, as far as if you're an AJAC or you have faith in math, just ignore this course. It says, hey, just start finishing up the vocabulary and get right into sentence mining. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say. And I mean, I think there is, some people want more grammar, you know, just to feel comfortable, and I think that's fine. Just if you were going to do extra grammar to have, you know, cling onto those training wheels a little longer, have a little more cushion before you jump in. I wouldn't do it like this. I would just, you know, make sentence cards, but with the grammar, and just make your job to be to understand the sentences or recall whatever aspect it is. Like if your goal is like, okay, be able to, like, you can go through the logic in your head as you recall it if you want to, like the grammar rules or whatever. But
at least here, I mean, it's all in Japanese, so you have to think, okay, why, you know, why is that? And if you looked at the book, the grammar explanations are in Japanese. So if you're using,
yeah.
So I mean, there are English
so
definitions.
it's like a little bit better. But
there are English definitions, so you could add the actual explanation in Japanese. So at least there now it's like you got Japanese teaching you Japanese. So there is that option. I don't have that available, but the idea is like, hey, this is not the book. These are just the practice questions from the book. The idea is, hey, you've got the book beside you. You can be reading it, and here's the revelations for it. You know, and it is up to you. So there is that option as well. So, but at least with this, it's all in Japanese. So that's definitely much better than Tae Kim, which is, you know, here's a whole sentence, here's what it is in English and whatnot. Do you comprehend it, yes or no? Here is like, okay, do you now have enough comprehension of Japanese to where why is it only this one or not any of the others? And I'm not even going to bother to answer. I should be able to answer it, but so let's say for example this one, because these are the ones I think is AJATers should be able to accomplish at around the 2,000 4,000 sentence mark. So let's see, yeah, like Ryopaku ji inaide. Sakubun no kaete kudasai. You see my Japanese pronunciation is horrible. Yokata. Desu ne. Hachiji de nakute mo ii. Yeah, okay, that's good. Ii desu ne. De nakereba ikenai. That means I have to do 800. That's not good. Hachiji de mo ii. No, that's not good. You say you don't have to do it. Hachiji de wa ikenai. Not able to do. No, so it's obviously the first choice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
anything else is stupid.
Well, what about the very last one?
Hachiji de wa ikenai. I'm not able to do. But
Yeah,
they say
because it
you
says
don't have to.
Hidokuji inai.
Inai de, yeah, so within 600 characters. But
No, but I think the first one's wrong because it
Okay.
says do it within 600, and the first one says, oh, it doesn't have to be 600, but that still implies it could be if you wanted to, but it can't.
I don't know.
So I think it's the last one.
All right, so good. But also on this one, I commit to the mistake. So since I made a mistake, I'm going to commit to it. So
Well, wait, I'm not even sure because then these type of problems are so.
God damn it. 100G day.
Actually, maybe it is the first one. I don't know. This isn't. This is a poorly made problem.
Okay, so I was thinking since the ikenai, not able to do. That's like you're not able to do 800 characters. Instead of.
Yeah, I mean, you can do these, but this is like the ability to do these problems is a byproduct of actual ability.
Right.
And
What
training to do
happened
these
is
problems
I paid
isn't
more
going to be.
attention. What was happening is when I was reading, I was paying more attention while I was reading, making sure I paid more attention to what people were saying or writing down or whatnot in the text, and it just made like especially when I got to like this website here, this right here, it's kind of like Reddit. I don't know.
Yeah, I know this site.
And yeah, so when I started reading this, he started making a bit more like I wasn't misunderstanding as much as I was. So I thought it helped out a bit.
Yeah, but I feel like if you just practice reading Japanese,
You're correct. But
So.
but what's telling me that how do I know if I interpreted it right or wrong?
Well, I mean, whether it makes sense in the context.
Okay.
The rest of the story will tell you whether you got it right or wrong,
And-
because otherwise it won't make sense.
You're correct. And this, again, we're getting to probably the points where now.
Because
Anyway,
I feel like
You are
with
correct.
these type
Yeah.
of problems,
Mhm.
like the ability to answer these problems is a byproduct of genuine ability.
Oh, yes.
But training in these things just creates the byproduct. It doesn't actually create the actual ability.
And
Is what it seems to me.
but what I liked about this though, it's not training production. It is training recognition. So it's not asking me to
Yeah, but
write
it
this
still
from
just has
memory.
this weird. It's
Yeah.
asking you to use the part of your brain that uses Japanese in a way that you never do in real life.
Okay. All right. So, way map, and again, it's very easy to say, hey, if you're one of the AJATers, just ignore this part. All right. This is, and the way I would say it's like if for AJATers, it's a confidence course, not a study course, just for
Yeah,
fun.
if you just want to go through it like
For fun.
in a half hour and see can I do it, then yeah, that's fine. But.
Okay, cool. All right, so there we go. And the way I would do it there is I put on so if you go to the Discord, I'm not going to bring up the Discord, I'm sorry, but if you go to that one site, I put all this to that Discord server. So you can just do it for fun. You don't have to, you're not studying, it's just for fun. And then it should be able, I think people who've done it on the Discord server, they enjoy it. So, all right, all right, so we're approaching and I apologize for all the very unprofessional quality of this review. All right, so right now we are at, all right, so that's pretty much everything. There will be some changes here, but the main goal here finally was to get down to all this, for me, in my opinion, and this is where I think I want to take people. Now I know this is not the AJAT way, or the Matt versus Japan's AJAT way, but what I want to do is take people to Japanese dramas. and start using Japanese dramas to learn Japanese. Instead of sentence mining from books, I want them sentence mining from dramas, especially for those that don't have the amount of time to dedicate to the immersion that, or the immersive study that you're able to do.
Yeah. So
so-
you're gonna, I mean, they have to do it with like your drama,
No.
like this drama, or they can do it with
show 'em how
anyone
to
they
do
want.
it. Do it with anyone they want.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
show 'em how
okay,
to
that's
do
good
it.
then. Okay. That's good then.
Now, a couple things I've done is slightly different. So what I recommend is like, okay, do four episodes of a drama. The first 4 episodes. Don't go beyond that. You could, but I don't. What I want to do is encourage people to taste different things, not just a lot of the same things. Start tasting different things. They should have been watching different dramas anyway up to this point. Like by this point in time, if they did my recommended path, I didn't tell them to do this, but what I will tell them from now on is like you should, the amount of time you spent studying, you definitely should have watched as much Japanese video. It should be a one.
You mean like actively watch?
Actively watch. So if it's off in the screen and you're studying, that's not actively watching. If it's got English subtitles, that's not actively watching. If it's you talking to someone while it's playing, it's not actively watching. If it's playing on your earphones and you're exercising, that's not active. All right, all that is passive. Now, that passive is great and all, but we're talking active. You got your ass in a seat watching the TV show. That's active. And I've got the goal of 1,000 hours. That's the ultimate goal.
Up until like by what point?
Yeah, so that'd be if you're at the age at 10,000 sentences, you should also be at that 1,000 of active hours of watching Japanese and 10,000 pages of reading Japanese text.
Okay. I can't really speak to the exact numbers because
I'm pulling that number out of my ass, but it's a nice round number, and it's something that, hey, if you did 2 hours a day for a year and a half, you're at 1,000 hours. So, but
sounds reasonable.
And by the way, I got that number from you because you said you watch about a couple hours of shows a day or something. So
it sounds about right.
Okay, but hey, you know what? If you're studying in a half hour a day, so you're studying much slower. Make sure, hey, you take a half hour or something to watch Japanese shows. You got to bring active watching into this, even if your studying is slow, because the SRS is going to keep you retain what you've learned, but you got to put that to use. Is that the neural network processing, whatever the fuck's happening in the brain, needs to start being developed.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get that just with the study material, because so you do need that active watching, but also that passive listening, all that passive stuff. Up to this point, like from here, what I would do is I would be creating for people who are not they haven't mined a drama yet, so they don't really comprehend Japanese audio completely. Like they might make out some stuff here and there, but for the entirety of a drama, there would be a lot of it they're missing. But I found out, and this was back in Africa, and this one, again, I lived in Japan, but most of my learning happened in Africa because I was removed from the internet, and I was only left with what I could study with, which is, so I happened to have had a lot of dramas downloaded. I had these programs from, converting, and I had all these spreadsheets and all this information. I kept it and tried to put it in a usable order. But I found out, like, after that year and a half of constantly listening to Japanese, even though I had a decently sized good vocabulary, I studied grammar and I enjoyed watching Japanese shows, and I watched shows in Japanese, I wasn't comprehending it, right? But then when I but again, I'm a working adult, so I'm in okay, let me put it this way: I'm in the U.S. Navy. I had a secret or a top secret level clearance, so I worked in areas where I couldn't even bring my iPod. So a lot of the day, I'm not even listening to Japanese, or I somehow to find ways to bring Japanese in the building. Like, let's say, have a scan CD and say, hey, this is only audio clips. Then I can be listening that way. But I only had little time in the evening for studying. But I did do everything else. Like, hey, whenever I was walking, exercising, doing all stuff, I was listening to Japanese. But I'm just saying, I wasn't getting the comprehension I heard Matt got. And but when I studied using SRS, subset SRS, these dramas. And I always put those dramas in their loop anyway. But I started realizing, hey, whenever these 5-minute clips came up of the drama that happened to be from the drama I studied, I knew, not only did I know what was happening, I knew I was anticipating what was happening. And I was like, I could actually reply back to it before it happened. It was like, and this happened within the first two dramas I studied. Now, it took me 10 hours to go through 1 hour worth of drama. So about the 20-hour mark of this, which isn't much in the grand scheme of things, I was immediately noticing a difference. I mean, it was.
But do you know if that carried over to like when you'd watch a new drama you'd never seen before?
Yeah, because at this was based in Africa, and there were Japanese Thai that were there. About 150. There was they were building the first Japanese foreign base since World War II. So, and I was one of the one or two people who knew Japanese of a at least decent level that I can communicate with them. You know, and I did some other stuff in Africa with them as well. So at least it was like I got an active way of not only testing it from dramas I was listening to, but they enjoyed talking to me, and we could talk in Japanese. Yeah, my Japanese sucked, but we could communicate, and they were having fun. So that's why I got excited with that discovery, and I try to pay attention to how I'm doing, how effective what I was doing worked, and it was just so apparent and so quick and just so rapid. It was just obvious this was a missing ingredient in AJAP world, because I was listening to all Japanese all the time. I was sitting down in the mess hall and reading through a manga or something, or watching dramas on my computer. I was doing that. Just this was the missing sauce. And the other thing was, because these were dramas with transcripts, I actually printed out these transcripts and was reading these transcripts all the time. But it was just so fun because it was near 100% comprehensible. And I wasn't struggling, I was just having fun. And I'd read it and I'd make the picture of the TV shows in my head. It was just great. But I couldn't do that at the beginning of my journey, is because I had that baseline there that made that part of me. I wasn't fighting learning that hour of drama. It just only took 10 hours, but my God, it was just wonderful. Now that was 8 to 10 years ago. And soon after that, when I got back from Africa, I stopped studying Japanese. I already told you that. So I'm not. So yeah, I do. I found something that worked, and I admit I did stop it after about 6 to 7 TV shows, or 6 to 7 hours, which is a very small amount in the grand scheme of things. But anyway, way I looked at it now. Okay, hey, while I was doing, so I wanted to show this to people to say how effective this was. So I created this for people, and no one did it. I mean, holy crap! If you click on here and look on the all the high score stuff of all time, looks like maybe 10 people. Okay. Well, at least that's better than I thought. It was a little bit less than that, but like maybe only 10 people. If you look on the Tae Kim and the Kanji one, 500 people have scored enough points to have completed the course. But this was like not many people have really bothered with this, because that's why I'm not gonna fight memorize. Because it was such a pain in the ass to put these courses on Memorize, because I had to upload every single audio clip individually. Screw that noise. All right, I could have done. Why am I wasting 6 hours to do something I could do in 5 minutes on Anki? So yeah, there's that. And but I'm not. This is not about Memorize. This is about Subset SRS, and this is where you and I might disagree, might not. The way I've got it set up, and I wish I could show you it with the course. It's not necessarily here, because that's what I did is, okay, this was my first attempt, so it's not very good. As I kept doing these, putting them into Memorize, I improved how they would work, which means that now anything I make would work as if it's the first thing I made from the very first one. It'll have all the improvements that I figured out need to go into a Subset SRS drama. So the easiest way to look at it is with this transcript one. So this is, I take a drama, I run it through Subset SRS. Then I take those subtitles lines and I run them through a Japanese text analysis tool, which gives me a vocabulary list. The new one, the one that says Unnamed Japanese Text Analysis Tool, that one adds an index that says, hey, where's the first line this vocabulary word was seen in the list that you gave me. So with that index, I match it up to the subtitle line. So here's a word, and here's the first subtitle line or sentence that it appeared in. So that's the sample sentence that goes with that word. So the way it would look like with here, and I'm just going to show you as a preview.
And wait, where are the original list of words coming from that you searched?
From the subtitles.
How do you choose which one you're going to do?
Okay, so I run that list through the Japanese text analysis tool, or the unnamed one. And what I do is I strip out, what I've already done is I ran that text analysis tool on Core 2K already. I've already run on Core 2K and Anki and Tae Kim. So I strip out all the vocabulary words automatically from that list. So I'm left with just stuff that's not from the Core 2K or Tae Kim sentences. And what I got was like maybe a group of 600 vocabulary words from all. So this was 60 pages of transcripts. All right. I don't include words that I learned from the drama, the subtitles of the dramas. This is just the transcripts left over. So I've already done. So from the dramas, it was about I want to say 1,200 words, ish, 1,200 word. And then from here, from 60 pages of transcripts, there are only about 600 words that I hadn't ran into, supposedly. Now again, if you know the text analysis tool, it gives you false positives and false negatives. So you take that.
Wait, so they're going to be starting this after they've already done the whole R6K?
No, 2K. Core 2K.
Okay.
No, you can do this earlier. It just it makes it like, again, the earlier you start it, the harder it is. It's still effective.
Yeah, and then wait, so are these to learn sentences, right? Not just the single vocabulary words?
Both.
Because why would you just learn the vocabulary words out of context if you could just...
You're not, because the key sentence is there from it. Because here, I'm going to add the sentence that...
None.
I'll tell you what. This one's going to be complicated because I haven't made a course with all the improvements that I discovered. So here we have chikatsugeru. And here's the sentence. Kisu o shiyoto, kao o chikatsugeru. So I remember that's when he's leaning in to kiss Riko when she's sleeping. So I remember that from the drama. So I know when I'm hearing this, I'm actually visualizing that robot leaning in to kiss the lady. And that's from the sentence from the transcript.
Okay.
Now, what I would do in Anki, and again, this is just for the vocabulary. So the idea is like, if you read this vocabulary word, and here's a sentence using it in context, do you know what that vocabulary word means?
Yeah, well, why don't you just put the sentence and say, understand the sentence?
That's going to come later.
Why not just do it now? Why?
Because there might be multiple words in a sentence. So those would be multiple entries. I want one point of failure.
Isn't there another optimizing tool that sorts sentences into I+1 order, like called Morphman or something?
But I'm learning this in the order of the drama. So
okay, but if you want to be all optimal about it, why wouldn't you do that approach?
Because I don't want to learn the drama out of order. So I'm going to basically learn the drama in 5-minute increments, or actually 50-sentence increments. So I split them up into 50 sentences, and here's the vocabulary words from those 50 sentences. So learn the vocabulary words. Now the vocabulary words, the order doesn't matter, but it's going to be, here's the vocabulary words from those that are from those 50 sentences. So okay, so learn those vocabulary words first, and you might use the same sentence 3 or 4 times because that sentence happened to have a different word appear 3 or 4 times, because it happened to be a long sentence. It doesn't matter. Or the question is, and this is not meant to be as intense as the Core 2K. It can be. You can make it intense, but it's not meant to be as intense. The idea here is about not about creating. It's not being active recall. It's passive recall for this. Because the idea, this is the drama you're going to be listening to a shitload of times. So I want you to have near 100% comprehension of this drama and have fun doing it. Because
but it sounds difficult because some sentences are just going to be way above the person's level, right. You know.
But since it's only going to be passive recall, not active recall, you're going to be, because you know what that sentence is and you heard it. That's going to be enough of the clue to give you what that word means.
Yeah, I know, but like, your goal is to understand like 5 minutes of this drama, right?
At a time, but eventually the whole drama.
Yeah. But some of those sentences might just be like way above the level of the person who's going to be doing this.
You're correct. You are completely correct. What I found out personally is that, okay, yeah, I don't get this word, but because I watch it so many times and I keep hearing this word, if I mark it wrong, because I said, hey, look, here's this word and I'm hearing it in the sentence. This is as long as you know, like Tobi Okiru, like this means jump up, jump awake. And I remember that she's just jumping out of bed. Now, if I'd seen this earlier, Tobi Okiru, I may have guessed, may not have guessed that it just means basically jumping awake. But yeah, they say, uwa, nani o wattete tobi okiriko. Tobi Okiru Riko. I guess it means I'm not trying to learn it to the level of, not the strict level I'm learning Core 2K vocabulary. Because this may not be a very common word. It might be a common word. I don't know.
Okay. So you just have this kind of pragmatic goal of you just want to understand this drama, basically.
Because I want to read that, because I'm going to listen to that drama a lot, and I'm going to read that transcript a lot. Because that's going to be my 100% to myself, personalized, 100% comprehensible drama, and 100% comprehensible 15 pages of Japanese text. Native Japanese text.
Okay, I think I get it now.
Yeah. Now
kind of just using this kind of intensive study as this kind of springboard to like spring you into native media.
Right.
Like bridge the gap between like totally outside to having some kind of foothold in the inside.
Right, and it was, the only reason is because in Africa, this was the very first, and again, now, you could be right, you could have been bored with this. This was the very first drama I learned 8 to 10 years ago, so that's why I used it again, because I was familiar with it. But I only studied the first episode. Here, I actually expanded it to 4 episodes. Now, I've seen this drama, or listened to it multiple times, but this is the first time I like studied it in detail for the second, third, and fourth episode. Even studying the first episode, I was actually finding out stuff because I had, improved my understanding of Japanese. Anyway, it has improved there are some parts that improved over the 6 years, but most of it went downhill. But when I was trying to recreate the Suggested Guide for Japanese Literacy, I actually learned a lot of stuff better the second time around because of the way in which I was encouraging students to learn it. So it actually helped me to learn it as well. So when I got to here, I was actually learning stuff even for that first episode. Not as much as the second, third, and fourth episode, though. But yeah, I just realized it's about, hey, I'm going to be listening to this a lot, and I want this. I would tell people, put this in the rotation. I mean, if you're going to listen to something multiple times, make this it, because because of the effort you put into it per sentence, you understand the audio when they're talking, you understand the text when you're reading. It's just like this magical 15 pages of comprehension in this entire ocean of kind of where you can see island and atolls around you, but this is like this big island, this, like you were saying, yeah, there you go, this foothold that you're going to slowly be increasing and making bigger and bigger, that all of a sudden if you go to a new land, it's a lot of it's going to be familiar because you've heard these words before. Now you've got complete in context Japanese because of the beauty that drama brings to the equation, or anime. This can be done with anime. This can be done.
Yeah, totally.
Or with I'm sure Katsumoto way back when, if he was able to do this with Star Trek Voyager, he would have loved to have done that. I think he watched the entirety of Star Trek Voyager in Japanese, if I recall correctly. But yeah, that's the main goal here. Now, so here's how I would do it in Anki. I would generate a drama. I'll try to do four episodes of the drama. So the first thing is I scan all the, so I create the subsets rest. So here's text file, here's a clip of the audio. I don't give a crap about images. Just clip of the audio, and here's the audio clip, here's the sentences, and the English translation. Now, the English translation is for the subtitles only, not the transcript. The reason why, and again, you and I may disagree, but the reason why is I consider that's like having a friend there who's an expert in Japanese kind of tell you, yeah, this is what it means. If you can't quite figure out what it means through looking at the sentence, you figure out what each of the individual words are, but now there are phrases in there that you're not finding in dictionaries, but it's because the way this is phrased and the context of the drama as a whole, this sentence means something that you may not directly translate. So, but if you interpret it, then it would mean this in English. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's like a cheat, but it's only when you're learning the sentence that you worry about it. All right, when you're okay, but that's the second part. So the first thing is, okay, I created you got the subsets rest. So you got the Japanese sentences, you got the audio clips, and you got the English translations. And then I run the Japanese text analysis tool through that. So now I've got all these group of new words that I filtered out all the basic words I already know. And because of that text analysis tool, I can filter out, if I wanted to, if I personalize this, I can filter out everything I've studied up to that point. So I never have to look at those words again. This should all be, for the most part, brand new words that I haven't ran into yet. All right, and then with that, I run that through EP Wing to Anki right now, so that's English definitions, but it's easy enough if you got a J to J dictionary, use those definitions instead later on. At this point, I think for people starting, Japanese to English is probably a better, or Japanese to English definitions are probably better at this point in time, just as a starting point. So you learn those words quickly. So when you learn a word, the way it's going to be when you're testing for the vocabulary part of it, you're going to hear the word, and you're going to hear, because I'm going to run the word through a text to speech, and you're going to hear that sentence. Do you know what that word means by itself in context of that sentence? Yes or no? That's the either answer yes or no to that question. And when you're in Anki, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So for in this case, this would be Tobio Kiru, and then this would be read out in text to speech as well. I can't do that in Memorize because, again, we all agree Memorize kind of sucks. But in Anki, no problem. All right, and you can do that, or if you want to, this could all just be reading. Like you can read this word and you can read this sentence, and do you know what this word means from just that? So that's up to the user. They can use audio or not use audio. It's up to them. Cool.
Yeah.
Now that's now this is the transcript part. From the drama though, it's all going to be in audio. You're going to hear the audio and you're going to hear the sentence. We're going to try to remove the need for subtitles. So can you hear that word, hear that sentence? Do you know what that word means? Yes or no? So that means that when you hear that sentence come up in the drama, you probably know at least what that word is trying to do in the sentence. And you're going to do that if there's multiple words in that sentence. You're going to use that same sentence multiple times. That's fine. But each one's going to be marked wrong because that one word that's being tested. Now that's vocabulary. Now comes that's 50 sentences. That's any new vocabulary from those 50 sentences. All right, now we're going to go over the 50 sentences. And that's going to be, if you know what that sentence means just from hearing it, just suspend it or delete it, whatever. Who cares? Okay, good. All right. You don't need to have wa, nani-o. You don't need to say stuff like this. But maybe this one, awatete, you may not have known what that is. And then tobio kiru. Okay, maybe you didn't know what that is. All right, cool. But because you already learned those two vocabulary words, now you want to know, what does this sentence mean totally? And, well, it's kind of obvious. Yeah, she was just kind of bothered and jumped up. But that's where that English translation could be. Now, this is a transcript, so there's no English translations to the transcripts. So that, but for the drama part, there is an English translation, so you can refer to that, and just make sure your understanding of that Japanese sentence meshes with what the English subtitle is saying. Now, unfortunately, a lot of English subtitles are fan-made, and there are mistakes. And in this drama, I was noticing a few translation mistakes. But you know what? That's a good point to be at, if you notice the mistakes. But if it's wrong, yeah, okay, fine. Eventually, you're going to get to a skill level where you've forgotten all about those mistakes and you've improved, and you've gone beyond that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And now here's what I did. Now this is a studying part. I do it like 10 sentences at a time. So first off, I learned all the vocabulary words at once, and then 10 sentences at a time. I watch that whatever time from the video is first without subtitles. All right. I just watch that. All right. For that cover those 50 subtitle lines. Then I go back and 10 sentences at a time. I rewatch it, and then I study those 10 sentences, and then I rewatch that time of those 10 sentences, see, do I get comprehension? Then I study the next 10 sentences, all right, trying to get comprehension. So it's either I'm deleting them, suspending them, or I'm sorry, either I'm suspending them or I'm spending time trying to comprehend what this sentence is saying in Japanese. And to make sure also play the audio enough to where I parse what they're saying, that sentence, so I can parse that sentence enough. Like I comprehend that one sentence at a time. So then what I'm doing is at the end of that, by playing that, let's say 1 or 2 minutes of drama, I've put all those 10 sentences together, and now do I understand what they're all saying together? And I found out, yeah, I can. So I keep doing that for all 50 sentences. Now I read about which is about 4 to 5 minutes of the drama, and I watch that all in Japanese with no subtitles. Am I comprehending that? Yes or no? Cool. Hopefully, usually from here, I've comprehended the whole thing. So now I move on to the next 50 sentences and keep repeating the process. And Anki, the beauty of Anki is it's going to either, if to testing the vocabulary to the sentence, That's easy. That's either yes or no. Do I comprehend what I'm hearing when I get the sentence audio? So when it's testing the sentence audio only. So none of the vocabulary words, it's just a sentence. That's where it's that's where I change things up. That's where I feel like, okay, hey, here's the audio, and here's the subtitles to the audio. Do you understand what's going on? You know, first off, you try to say, do you understand it with just listening? If not, okay, read the subtitles. Do you still understand what's happening? If yes, okay, good. Success. Fine. If not, all right, maybe it's time to look at that sentence, study it a bit more, and figure out what you had forgotten. What were you missing in that sentence? And just that's it. I don't know. I mean, to me, that's all I was doing, and it just I didn't sweat getting the as long as I understood what the sentence as a whole was trying to accomplish, that's all that mattered. And I don't know. Maybe I'm explaining it wrong, but
no, I think I got it.
But the main goal, and again, this is going off my experience of what was that magical turning point, and you could say it's just because hey, I hit that point where you finally knew how to ride the bike without the training wheels. I don't think so. I mean, when I put these into
it, yeah, I can tell you what my thoughts are as of right now. That I was just what I've been thinking. It kind of so. I see it really clearly in my head. I have to think about how to put it into words, but if you think about AJAT, traditional AJAT, as like a car, right? And you're trying to start the car and get going, there's like a bunch of different components that need to be,
all working in conjunction.
Yeah. And I think, and so one of those is like mass immersion, and then the SRS, playing a supporting role, but the immersion's doing a lot. And so the idea is that you learn everything in an I+1 situation, like when it's most convenient to learn that thing. And so in a way, aspects of it seem more optimized than what you're doing here, because it's like here, your goal is to understand this 5 minutes, but maybe some parts of that, it's not going to be optimized to I+1, obviously, right? It's more, obviously, if you're just playing to I+1, it's going to be most optimal to just be letting media just wash over you, and you pick out very carefully the ones that are just perfect for you right now at this one point of time, and you learn everything that way. And so that's why, in a way, it's most efficient, because you're doing everything I+1. And so, but I guess in order for this to work, in order for it to build up to a mass so that the pot actually starts to boil, you need to have a certain mass of input going at all times. And if your total amount of input is below a certain level, then the car just won't start at all. And so then the efficiency goes from like 100% to 0, basically. And so it seems like you've kind of came up with this mechanism that kind of breaks the rule of sheer efficiency, but at the same time kind of gives you this like boost under constrained circumstances, where like you basically have created a different kind of car that can start with less total gas and still get, and like ride with like less total materials, but it's not maybe quite as efficient, but it still is way better than that 0 that you get when you don't have the giant mass to make the original one work, in a way. Because it kind of seems like you have this concentrated way of studying where you just kind of forget the efficiency in I+1 just for a second, and it's kind of just like, no, can I just like get this 5 minutes? Like, can I just get to the point where I can understand something and actually understand it? And you're a little bit rough around the edges with that, but you still do it, and then you can understand, and then you can use that as an anchor to get to kind of more things. So if you like, because I've never really thought that much about people who don't have, about like what people should do when they don't have as much time. Because for me, that was never really what interests me. What always interests me is this imaginary scenario where you're just in a room with nothing to do but study Japanese all day. What should you do? That's always just the way I thought about it for some reason.
And that's what Hazing did. By the way, that's what Hazing did.
It's kind of just my personality. So it's like, it's not, I'm kind of new to thinking about adding in the other factors, because it's kind of like thinking about physics without worrying about like air pressure and friction and all that stuff. It's like just physics 101, where everything's ideal. And so I guess it's kind of like, in theory, it kind of makes sense to me. Because, I mean, listening to your experience, right, like, it obviously helped you. And, I mean, at the end of the day, my experience with language learning is that theory and practice don't line up. Like, a lot of times something will sound like a great idea on paper, and you try it, and it just doesn't work. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's clear why, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize this was going to happen. Sometimes you don't even know why.
Right.
And the same can be true. And so, like, I'm kind of the opinion where, like, I've never done this personally, and so I can't really say for sure. All I can say is that it seemed to help you over that hump, and it kind of makes sense, at least theoretically, to me. But I couldn't, like, truly give my stamp of approval unless there was, like, clearly people who had, like, done, like, more people who had done this and had it work, you know?
Yeah. And the way I was thinking of it is, like you're saying, like, you don't have, my level of Japanese at that point was very low. And I was trying to do, like, the first time I did this with dramas, I did it without the English subtitles. So that's why I thought that actually made it harder on me. When I shouldn't have worried about that. I should have said, this is kind of like Hazy give you an English keyword for a kanji, or using an English definition for a vocabulary word. By using this English interpretation of that Japanese sentence, that built a quick comprehension that I didn't need the English sentence after that. I got it all from the context of the Japanese. So now when I'm hearing it in Japanese or reading it in Japanese, the comprehension is there, even though it initially started because of that little English push. That was just enough to allow it. Now I can just use just Japanese, if that makes sense. So it's like, hey, it's just like the daddy behind the guy on the boy on the bicycle, give him the gave the little push, but now he can ride. Right now he's riding a bicycle. He can't stop the bicycle. He can't start the bicycle, but on his own power, with that little push, he can at least ride the bicycle, and that's the fun part. And the daddy's behind him, ready to catch him if he falls down.
Because like if you say like basically, so maybe say that's like like I plus 1.5.
Okay.
Things, right? And so the English removes the 0.5 and allows you to comprehend it, but you only need that little push, right?
Right.
So the way I view it is like, if you were in full immersion, like, because there's always going to be true I plus 1 things where you don't even need that push, you can understand it. It's like just it's context, like so perfect
through context.
That it's like the second you see it, you've just learned it because it's that perfect. And so if you have full immersion, you have enough opportunities where you can get all the learning that you need to do done just through that. Okay. But if your time is restricted, you get to the point where you're not going to have enough opportunities to have that happen. So then you move on to saying, okay, well, how can we take advantage of I plus 1.5 instead of just the I plus 1? Because if we only go on I plus 1, we're basically like you don't. It's like if you don't have enough to keep you alive. If you're like a person, you know, it's like you don't have enough food to keep you alive. But can we maybe like have some water or something that will like keep us alive a little longer? It's a really bad analogy, but. So it kind of makes sense to me that if you're under time restraints, then the original AJAT philosophy does fail, because it basically is this equation, and if it's lacking certain parts, then it doesn't work at all. And so, yeah, it does check out for me theoretically.
All right, cool. I mean, I get it. You haven't. I know what you mean about how people think of something and they come up with this amazing idea, but then I tried it and it's like, okay, like what AJAC was saying. But again, I was trying to apply it to me. And I was seeing what was working with it.
Like it obviously has worked for you.
Like Hazig making up stories. He's like, no, make up your own stories. That didn't work for me. Okay, when I saw somebody else's story, then I made up my own, kind of based off what they did. Like for me, that helped. It was just that little push, and then I did the rest on my own. So instead of saying, no, you're all on your own, okay, here's a slight push, like what reviewing the kanji brought to the table. They gave that slight push on these user-generated stories that allowed a lot more people to finish RTK than normally would have happened. They would have just stopped at the 400 or 500 character mark when they had to start making up their own stories because they didn't feel creative enough. But if you gave them, here's an example story, and from that make your own, cool. All of a sudden, that makes sense. And then comes the grammar point. Tae Kim, I thought, was amazing. He was that push that I needed because he explained grammar in a way that where I could comprehend it. It just clicked to me. It's like, okay, I understand prepositional phrases, and I can put prepositional phrases all over the place because I'm a master of English. I can put prepositional phrases. And I know reverse Polish notation from mathematics. I get that you can put the magical equation thing at the end that changes what all these numbers you've inputted up to that point do. So I was like, okay, it's if you ever see reverse Polish notation versus regular mathematics, it looks like, what the fuck? But then it's like, it makes sense once you get it. It's like, okay, yeah, you have to work with it a lot. You can't just be told what it is. You actually then have to start doing equations like that to actually work with it. And I apologize for bringing mathematics up into this, but you gotta understand also, a lot of this is developed for me as I'm both a teacher. I taught in the Navy, I've taught in the real world, but also I'm kind of an engineer. I was an electronic technician in the Navy, and I have the engineering thinking. I'm really good at mathematics and sciences. So I was applying this as, how would an engineer approach language learning? And I think that's the reason why 10 years ago in the reviewing the kanji community, all these resources got developed, because you had programmers and technicians trying to learn Japanese, not as a college student, but as a working adult. And so they're trying to make this as efficient as possible. And what you had to do is say, okay, you got all these tools, now how to effectively use them in the best way. And that's what I was trying to do with because we were having this like 1.5 to 2 years of all this stuff got gathered. But this was like, unless you read through the entire forums, you didn't know really how to use it. And everyone was constantly asking the same question, so I just said, all right, fuck it, here's my FAQ list, and that was it. That was a suggested guide for beginners. You know, again, I think you and others looked at that guide, and it was that push. You didn't need to use it 100%, but it was that push that got them into it, and then they continued on their own path. And that's kind of what this is all doing. It's like, this is that push, that slight push.
Yeah.
And until that point where you feel like, yes, I can take off on my own, then now you're rolling, and now you feel, oh fuck, you know, and all of a sudden the next day you don't need that push. You have that confidence. You start the bike on your own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Also, one thing that one other thought I have in general is kind of like that. I think everyone is different to some degree, meaning that everyone's like runs into different kind of unique issues with AJAT. Like, because I talk to a lot of people who they ask me questions, they have difficulties and stuff that just never happened to me. Like it was just like I never had any trouble with that, so I don't really know what to tell you. And the reverse has happened. Like I've struggled with stuff that some of my other friends who have succeeded with AJAT like didn't have any trouble with. And so I think like a lot of the innovations you made are kind of like addressing specific issues that you had, which probably a lot of other people have, and so are really helpful.
Right.
But also at the end of the day, like everyone's going to run into their own unique issues, and they're going to have to figure out what to do like on their own.
Yes.
And so, like, just my kind of only, I mean, maybe you already have this to some degree built in, but I think it would be the biggest probably thing that I think you would need to add to your course is like kind of just general like mindset of how you're going to think about language learning and how language learning works. Like try to like give them kind of like explain crashing to them and explain to them like, okay, learning is different than acquisition. Acquisition happens unconsciously and through this and this, and because that's one of the things that I see the most like lost souls in the community of people trying to learn Japanese like don't understand those basic principles, you know. And like I talked about in that video you have on the screen.
And I'll be honest, it's like watching, you know, because you did, and you and Brit vs. Japan did that I was looking for the longest time, which were success stories from people who were fluent in Japanese. Like before then, there was pretty much just Katsumoto, and then I mean, yeah, Tokyo Sam. He was a fan of Katsumoto, but I didn't consider him a success story. I don't know if he is now or not. But he was a very visible character that was advertising AJAT. And you know, if you go back and look at my posts on the Japanese forums way back when, and then before I went to the reviewing Japanese forum, AJAT clicked with me, all right. And reviewing the kanji, it clicked with me. It's just like, you know, this, and then when Core 2K, you realize, hey, it clicked with me that this is what's needed. And same with Tae Kim, it clicked with me. So because it was clicking, I was hoping it would click with other people. But I wanted to make sure it was in a format that worked, not a format that, you know, you had to fight against. And
yeah.
And like I said, I guess a good way of saying it is like, hey, look, I'm going to I'm going to buy the ingredients, I'm going to cook the ingredients, I'm going to serve it to you. I'm not going to chew up the food and spit it in your mouth, though. You at least got to study the part, okay?
Yeah.
I guess the whole chewing up and spitting in someone's mouth, that's the English subtitles. That's the English dubs, all right? So if you like eating regurgitated food, there you go. But if you want to, like, at least... okay, that's about it.
But, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. But it's still... I would like if you add more content that's kind of more just like general language learning mindset, and I would emphasize like independence.
Okay.
And like knowing that like, hey, I'm feeding this to you, but this isn't gonna be here forever. Like you're gonna eventually go off on your own, and you're gonna have your own problems, and you're gonna have to solve your own problems, and like you're gonna have to get creative.
Yep.
And I would explain to people like, because it kind of seems like in my mind, there's two different people who you're serving up to, two different groups, and of course they'll probably overlap a lot in many different ways. But one of them is people who original age-at is too intense for them. It's not a matter of time; it's a matter of like they can't put up with that because it's too boring and intense.
Like they purposely say, and they already know them. Apparently, they know themselves so well. They know that for some reason, listening to Japanese is impossible. Or better yet, the worst ones are the ones that they say exactly what's the problem, but they never at least come up with a solution. And
So that's one group that I think you're lowering the bar, the threshold, in order to, and you're making a smoother path that requires less suffering to get to the point where things are flowing. And the other group of people is people who have less time, and so they need kind of a different method to work to get to the point where age-at works under like a timed restraints where the biggest portion, the most important ingredient in age-at, which is immersion, is like lacking. Right. So you need to take a different strategy. It's
I don't know. No, that part. No, I'm not saying even I, working in top secret, I was able to get Japanese into my life. Now had to be creative to do it, and that's where age-at shined. He was
But I'm talking about like you've mentioned multiple times. So I was doing like a lot more immersion each day than you could, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, of course, you're still going to need to do a lot of immersion. And you're going to have to work hard to get as much as you can. But like you said, some people are working full-time jobs, and they're just not going to be able to immerse as much as I did in my day.
Well, there's a difference between immersion and active watching. Now, the immersion part is that's playing that comprehensible audio at all times. So that means I'm trying to at least put a comprehensible Japanese in your life as early as possible, because you may not be able to sit down and listen to it and all that, but because you're walking. But the sitting down watching a movie or a TV show, if you had a choice between studying for a half hour, watching a TV show for a half hour, all right, which did you not do first recently? Like have you studied for 2 hours? Well, then maybe watch TV for 2 hours. Like that'll be your study time. Don't count it studying; you're just having fun. But make that a habit of the process. That's what I would recommend to people who don't have time. The subsessor S at least will make sure that you retain what you learn, because you're going to be learning over a slow period of time, but at least what you learn you retain. Then the immersive audio is there, because you can play that at all times, so at least you're hearing stuff you understand. Then when you find the time, you can then watch the TV shows, which you may or may not comprehend.
But just like what I mean is like it kind of sounds like for you had back in your original time when you were in Africa or whatever, you weren't as immersing in nearly as much as I was, and you were kind of struggling, to like break that point. And then you did this thing with the dramas, and then that boosted you basically like to the other side of the tunnel, Yeah.
For and that so comprehension, comprehending, because again, I understood I could write kanji. 25. I think I had 2,500 kanji memorized by that time. I was up to 23,000, or I think it was increasing to 3,000 vocabulary words. But learning the words got boring, and I didn't even bother with grammar because I just stopped at Tae Kim. But anyway, it was just you're right.
Yeah, but I mean, just what I'm saying is like I think that if you had like maybe 3 times as much immersion as you had back then, then you probably wouldn't have even needed to do that drama thing, and age-at would work automatically.
But then, because I was in a situation like a lot of working adults find them in, I realized how successful these dramas can be for people in my situation.
So what I'm saying is that's why I say there's 2 basic groups, and they probably overlap. Is the people that you're modifying age-at so that it functions better under time constraints, and you're also making it easier for those people who need it to be easier for them. But I think you might make different, if you have guides of how to use the materials that you've created, maybe differentiate that, because for the people who are just low on time but aren't lacking in motivation and grit and determination, then they probably can skip on that whole second or middle section of decks that you kind of have, that are probably not necessary, and they can probably go straight to the drama. But the drama part's probably important. because that's probably what can like give you that boost when you're under constricted time.
And by
But
the
then
way, good point, good fucking point, man. I will definitely do that. Thank you.
and then the people who just want their hand held a little more, then they can like do as many of those decks as they want.
Right.
As long as they still know that eventually they're gonna have to go out into the real world and
Right. And I'll be honest, by the way, hey, you know what, this Patreon thing, so if they want to, you know, I'm going to, because, again, I'm going to develop those courses for here. You know, if you want to pay I think this one's going to be $10, so you get access to these courses and any of the other additional stuff I make for it, you know, and whatnot. This would be $15, you know, whatnot. I'm going to treat it like that. Hey, I'm going to be putting effort. I'm going to curate this stuff, make sure it's in a nice format. You know, and I'll give access to the spreadsheets that I made or the video clips that I made or any of the additional stuff, you know, and if I make dramas, if you want my pre-made stuff, I'll make that available to people. You know, for those that, you know, maybe they don't want to spend the 2 or 3 hours it takes to put this shit together, you know, here it is, boo, have at it. And, yeah, and if they want this whole guided pace, hey, fine, you can pay for it. I would recommend, it's kind of like a gym membership. I don't... I guess let me bring CrossFit into this. I did CrossFit, and you always hear people talk about, hey, don't be cheap ass, pay $100 for a CrossFit gym. You don't need to go to a CrossFit gym to do CrossFit. You can do that on your own. But if by paying that encourages you to go to a gym and get in shape, well then money well spent. But and I won't insult people who do that. But at the same time, I won't insult people who do it on their own either. You know, it's they're both good as long as the main goal is for fitness. In our case, the main goal is for literacy. But you'll have haters. It's like apparently they're offended by the fact that you're getting good in Japanese a way they don't like. Oh no, it's like the people who bitch about people who play a Guitar Hero. It's like, stop having fun. That's not a real guitar. Who cares? I'm having fun. All right. I don't watch anime. I don't piss on people who do. I watch mainly dramas, and I'm gonna start watching Netflix. So I'm gonna watch American shows with Japanese audio. All right, and they're like, no, you need to hear it's Stranger Things. You need to hear the kids speak. They're amazing actors. I don't give a fuck. I want to hear it in Japanese. All right, I'm good at English. All right, I want to hear this shit in Japanese. So I'm used to like BoJack Horseman. I can't watch it in English anymore. Their voices sound too weird. Don't I? I mean, he just has an amazing, funny voice in Japanese. But yeah. So Rick and Morty sounds weird in Japanese, but. Okay. But yeah, I mean at least that's Netflix, and that's what Netflix brings to the table now. It's before you had to download all this. Now you just bring Japan to you, and you're not fighting it. And this whole guide here is just to get it to where, hey, making the fact that you're watching Japanese, you get more out of it as early as possible, because that stuff's going to be random. That's going to be the wilderness. So this is, hey, okay, let's get your training up, and let's get your backpack stuff full of gear that's going to make your trip through the wilderness each little trip easier and easier. And the more you put in your head, the less you got to carry in your backpack. So, again, you can travel further and you get more out. But it takes, as time and this what you're doing. And here's what I think I would recommend you tell your guys. Look, keep a balance between how much you're studying and how much you're watching Japanese. And of course. And how much you want, and think about how much time you want to study that. If you're going to do it like 2 hours, that's probably going to be about 30 new sentences, because about 15 sentences an hour. How long do you take to understand 15 sentences? Or how many sentences can you learn in an hour? Like, it's something new, something that's like you never knew before.
Well, I would hope like 15 if they're actually I+1 sentences.
Okay, so and that sounds like a good pace. So it's like, okay, so 30 cents would be like 2 hours. If you're doing studying for 2 hours, also make sure you're watching 2 hours of television, or watching an hour of television.
I would probably even say twice as much immersion as active study.
Yeah, and I don't even call it. I mean, I get I know what you mean. So I say undistracted viewing, because immersion could be you can make it by playing audio you understand.
Well, that's why I have a video where I explain 3 different types of immersion, and I define them. And I call active immersion. I say there's active immersion, partially active immersion, and passive immersion. And active immersion is what you're talking about. You're sitting down, you're paying 100% undivided attention. Partially active is when you're listening to it while you're cooking or cleaning or walking somewhere. You're still paying attention. You're still like following along, but it's not. You're still kind of distracted. And then passive is when it's just back in the background. You're like actively ignoring it.
Okay.
And I
Awesome.
say that, yeah, you should aim for, like, I think it's ideal to do twice as much active immersion as you have like active study time.
Okay. I'll
But
buy that.
it's doesn't it's that is a lot. It's
No,
hard
no.
to
But
do it.
hey, if you're going to study for a half hour, hey, add in another. I would say half hour, but yeah, add in an hour. Make sure, hey, the next anytime you sit down for Japanese, it's going to be watching something in Japanese. Now, for me, if I spent 10 hours of that, here's why I decided to do the whole 1,000 hours, 10,000 pages. One, it fits in with that 10,000 sentence thing. Katsumoto just pulled it out his ass. It was a good thing he pulled out, right? But there's
People
something
like
magical
those
about it.
type of things.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
round numbers. There's something magical about them. But at least what I could say is, hey, if you're at this goal here, if you're at this basic part, this is all basic. So this is 250 to 400. You should at least watch 250 hours of drama or anime or something at this point. Probably, hopefully, you've read about 2,000 pages of text. You know, and if it's a manga, then I think like I was reading through a manga about 2 hours, so treat that like 30 pages. Like one manga is 30 pages of text. And again, I'm pulling that number out of my ass, but just something so you can say, hey, well, okay, hey, just kind of track how much you are watching Japanese. It gives you something, a fun milestone to approach. Like if you hit that 100-hour milestone, you know, post it and say, hey, what happened? You know, for me, I was like when I read the first 100 pages of Harry Potter, I put it on the mini milestones on the Kohi forums because hey, this was a kind of a cool milestone. I read 100 pages of a book, you know, and then I got next 100 pages or something. Then soon maybe 100 pages is enough to say when you finish a book, those will be your milestones. Or when you finish instead of every hour of shit TV you watch, now it's every TV series you finish, like the very first season you finish, and then later on it could just be like every 5 seasons that you finish. Those could be cool milestones, and you hit those 200. So what I would say here is like a good milestone is like this basic 200 hours of immersive viewing and read.
Yeah, if you can actually get people to do that.
Yeah. Well, if you give them a goal, they'll aim for it.
Yeah, that's true. It just I'm kind of worried that people will kind of slowly slack on that because I feel like when the kind of people that are really into learning Japanese are the kind of people who when given a choice to watch a TV show for an hour or study for an hour, they actually choose to study for an hour.
Right.
Because they feel like they're making progress.
Right. And your guy, you remember your last video? He covered that. He said it was a mistake he made. He said, "Why would I watch anime when I could be studying?" And you realize,
but I feel like even if you tell people this, it's going to be tricky. But if you can actually get them to do that, then I think it's good. Because my biggest fear is that like the kind of person who like prefers this over the what I offer, right, is the kind of person who already likes structure and instruction being given to them and stuff, and so it's like I get worried that they're going to get to the end of this, and are they really going to be able to just jump out into the sea of Japanese all by themselves? But I think if they actually did as much immersion as you're telling them to, like if they've actually spent like at the end of that thing like 200 hours of just sitting and watching Japanese with no subtitles, then they probably will have gotten comfortable enough at that point. So my thinking is like if you can actually get them to, which is going to be difficult, then I think there is. It seems at least theoretically, you could get people who would fail or have failed at the original AJAT to succeed, like at the same goal. But I still just have to always just preface it with saying that it's all just theory. It makes sense in theory, but no one's done it yet, so can never guarantee.
All right. No, and I still feel like I've actually. I remember you made a comment like you thought you were beyond my level at the 3 months of AJAT, and I don't think you realize like what my passive skills are. I mean,
I have no idea how good you are.
Yeah.
How could I?
You can only base it on my output, and I know my output sucks, and I'll.
Yeah, fair enough. I probably said that with not very much thought. I have no idea how good you are.
And I didn't take it as insult. I realized it's a misunderstanding of what happened with me. Like I said, you don't say I studied 20 years because if I took a college course in Japanese 20 years ago, even though I never studied Japanese for 10 years past that, you don't say I started 20 years ago. I haven't been studying for 20 years. It's just 20 years ago I took a semester. 10 years ago I did 2 to 3 years of I tried to take this very seriously with a lot of fuck-ups along the way. Like, again, we were doing some stuff that ended up not being a waste of time. But in the end, we created something that was useful that other people could utilize and at least benefit from our mistakes. And I love doing that and offering that up to people. And yeah, I was teaching Hiragana, Katakana, and Kanji on base, but that was teaching that stuff in English to Americans and, well, a couple of Chinese students, because it turned out they actually enjoyed learning Japanese kanji because it was a little different than what they knew. So I was surprised she was in my class, but she really enjoyed it. And so I did have this passion. I do believe what I did worked. I just knew I also stopped early. And so I wanted to carry on from that. And so this is what it's meant to be. I like the idea of bringing more people into the fold. And I do believe AJAT works, and it doesn't have to be maybe the method has to be different, whether if you did Hazing or what you did, which is you can concentrate 8 hours a day in Japanese. Yeah, learning all 3,000 kanji first is a very good idea, and then immersing yourself in the language is a very good idea. If you're someone like me as a working adult, that may not be that option. Well, here's another path. And I like that you at least agree in theory it sounds like a workable path, because it worked with me. And like I said, I can only give examples of how I succeeded. Like, after I got back from Africa, I took the Defense Language Proficiency test, and I scored a 2.0 on the reading and a 1.5 on the listening. So my reading was far superior than my listening on there. Now, and that gave me it wasn't enough to get paid as a linguist, but I got a NEC, or Navy Enlisted Classification Code, as Japanese linguist. So at least I had a skill level that the military recognized, which in turn, that helps me in my career. So for people who are working adults, building a level of fluency in the language, even if they're not like at native level fluency, you know, they may be in jobs, like especially military, where having a knowledge of Japanese, even at that basic level, can show benefit and reward. Where all of a sudden, you're at least a guy they come to when it comes to Japanese, even if you're, I'm the one-eyed guy in the Valley of the Blind, but still. And it turned out also if I teach English, because I learned Japanese, I think I teach English better, because like I said, I really hate the fact that I have to force these kids to talk. I fucking hate it. But let me back off. Wait, okay, never mind. This is not an interview about me. I apologize. This is about the guide. So you said we might do an interview with me as one of the AJAT failures later on, if you'd like to do that sometime later. But this was mainly about this guide. I think we are at the end. From this point, it's all just kind of it's going to be the same as a basic, but it'll be at an intermediate level with structured material, or go off on either doing dramas, or later on, and you say to yourself, you have to start mining books. Japanese literature is written much different than the spoken. And that's why I like the idea of doing the transcripts from Drama Note, is because those transcripts are kind of like 15-page short stories of a show you just watched. So the sentences I was showing you was actually describing what was happening in the scene. And it's a very powerful text to read, because that does carry over, because that helped me read Harry Potter. That helped me read like the first parts of Norwegian Wood, because I got used to reading these descriptive texts, and I was very comfortable with it. And I was hearing Japanese in my head, not Nuke Marine's way of pronouncing stuff, but the way a native person was speaking stuff, because I was leaning on that part. That's what I was drawing upon.
So I guess just to conclude, I think I kind of think of what you're doing as an experiment, because the way I know like maybe 10 people total who used AJAT and has gotten to a level similar to me or higher.
Okay.
And all of those people have very many things. They have very similar personalities. They have a lot of personality traits in common, because I think it takes a certain type of person to make the original AJAT method really work, you know? And so if you're outside of that certain bubble of you have these personality traits you need, then AJAT won't work for you. And if AJAT won't work for you, then probably nothing very much will to help you get to a really higher level. So then my experiment, what I think is you're saying that in theory you could get someone outside of this personality trait up to a certain point where it's kind of like where you have to get to like the orbit of a planet, where once you're in the orbit, then you'll keep going automatically, you know? Mm-hmm. And you can you'll somehow make some kind of rocket booster that will get them close enough where they can get sucked into the orbit, and then they'll still be able to succeed. And so it's like, so that people outside this personality trait will eventually be able to reach the same goal, and then we'll see more people with different personality traits being really good. Like that would be I view this as an experiment that I think maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work because maybe it just turns out that no matter how much help they get, if you don't have the personality, you won't be able to follow through.
But I think it is working because that guide I did way back when in 2010, people have followed and have gotten to a
I think there is, because I think there is no like a good reason to believe that it will work, or at least it's not really a yes or no thing. It's more like how far away from the ideal AJAT personality can you get and still make it work? Because obviously there is some room where like some people you're not going to be able to help no matter what you do. Some people don't need any help, but there's going to be some group of people where probably most likely that they will succeed because of what you did, but they wouldn't have without it.
All right.
You know.
And I would say it's like when I say AJAT, I just don't mean the studied method of AJAT. I just mean the listening to it a shitload of time, reading it a shitload of times. But I can't use that as a tagline anymore because it, censors and whatnot. So I'll just say, okay, watch 1,000 hours of drama, read 10,000 pages of text, of Japanese text. Again, so that's listening to a shitload of Japanese and reading a shitload of Japanese. So that is all Japanese all the time, what I think. And even if the methods have to be, the study method has to be slower and more slower pace. The hours you invest is still going to be the same, I think. As far as the study.
Well, I think it would take a little more hours because it's a little less efficient, but it's just a necessary it's a necessary sacrifice.
All right. And like I said, this was back in 2009. I said it, why AJAT does not work for my listening skills. And then I immediately added to that and how I got it to work. So it's right there, how to make AJAT work for my listening skills. So this is something, again, this is like almost 10 years ago that I had discovered. And it was. And like I said, to me it was a self-evident that I couldn't see how it couldn't work for other people that were at that point. Okay, thank you all. Oh, and by the way, I will add one more thing. The other thing AJAT works for is kids, because since I study English, I had 2 children that I taught that speak fluent English, and they all have 2 things in common. For the first one, her mom was showing her English like Disney shows since she was a baby. So this girl has never been outside of Japan. Her parents don't speak English, and she speaks fluent English. She's a perfect example of AJAT for kids. Just don't worry about teaching your kids English. Just let your kids watch English shows, English cartoons for 2 hours or more a day. All right, and the magic will happen. At least with kids, you can say magic happens. And I had
that's what Stephen Krashen says that should happen.
Yeah, and so she speaks. And her Japanese is perfect, and she does other stuff besides that. So she's not some geek or anything. She's just a regular 8-year-old girl that speaks fluent English. So I keep telling her, look, I don't need to teach her English. I just need to engage with her in English and have to talk to her in English and have fun doing other stuff in English, because there's no reason to teach her anything. All right, she's got nothing to learn. She's doing that on her own by watching stuff in English. But you know what happens with most people? They see something that works, they want to fuck with it. All right. Yeah. And then they apparently know immediately everything you're doing wrong. Never mind the fact that everything you did has worked up to that point. And, so someone like her or like another student I had that was watching it, another child, he's kind of a little different. He was always reading English. So he reads amazing, but his pronunciation sucks. And it's not to insult him. He's a nice kid, and all that. But again, it was actually how these kids were doing. It's also encouraged me to get back into the Japanese thing. Because I can't use Japanese at that school, and I find that stupid. It's like, at least for the kids that don't speak English at all, why are you forcing them to use English? Look, I understand what they're saying in Japanese. If they understand what I'm saying in English, mission fucking accomplished right now, don't you think? What does it matter they can't say hello if I say these words and they can point to the right picture? That's success. But
yeah, well, they don't understand how language acquisition works at all.
And they just want the parents to hear them say the alphabet, and all of a sudden the parents going to clap, and that's all they want. So it's unfortunate, all of that, because they're investing all this time, and it could have been time better. Like, I could be there as the corrective mate, the corrective issue slightly, and then the most time all the learning is going to happen at home. But they don't want it with that. They want all the learning to happen that 1 hour a week of school. And it's just insane. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to... Matt, thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
For those of you who are listening on the live stream, the iTalki Tutor session happens in about 1 hour and 10 minutes. Now, I'm going to do something different today. The first 40 minutes, I'm going to be reading the transcript to the 3rd episode of Zettai Kareshi. The the tutor, he's going to read the descriptive parts, and I'm going to read the audio parts, basically the dialogue, because I've heard that dialogue a number of times, so I'm going to try to mimic them. So we're going to try that experiment. He sounds excited about that. And then the last 20 minutes is going to be the Chewbacca. So I'm going to talk in English, he's going to talk in Japanese, and we'll see if communication happens. By the way, Matt, what's your opinion on the Chewbacca method?
Honestly, I don't get why it would be any better than just listening to anime.
Right.
Without any help.
But sometimes you want to go out and interact with people, and if you want to be in a Japanese environment, okay, you just say, hey, look, you understand English, you're uncomfortable with talking. I understand Japanese, I'm just uncomfortable with talking Japanese. Let's have fun at a bar.
Yeah. Well, if you like have Japanese friends in real life, and this is like a real interaction where it's like it's not just about learning languages, it's about like you're actually having human interaction and language learning might also happen, then yeah, it's like that's a great thing to do. I've done it as well. But it's like if you're like going to pay a tutor to do that to you just for you, it's kind of like
it's not just for me. I'm doing it for the Patreon thing.
Yeah. No, I think it's a fun thing to do if you in real life if you have Japanese friends. But in terms of like what is it going to do for your ability? Nothing different than just listening to.
And I know that I'm doing it for fun. I was doing it as a way because I was getting money on the Patreon, but I didn't really know because I didn't need the Patreon thing. So I appreciate their support and all that, but I just was trying to think of a way to do it. So I hired the italki tutor. I was thinking of ways of making it. Before they were just watching me review Japanese and then correcting my pronunciation. That was all. But now I want to do it to where I'm reading the transcripts and then he corrects my pronunciation as I'm reading Japanese text. And the last 20 minutes is just because, okay, hey, just have some fun. And that's all. But what I think where this italki happens is if you are going to be speaking Japanese, it might be useful to have that tutor there to correct your pronunciation. If you're mimicking Japanese audio, they can make sure you're mimicking it correctly. How does that sound?
I don't really think it's going to help because really, like pronunciation is too subtle of an issue. It's just like when you hear a foreigner who's very 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 good at English speak English. You can notice every little subtle thing, right? Like even if he pronounces one vowel just a little bit off, it sticks out like a sore thumb to you because we have this sense of what English is supposed to sound like that is just so sharp. Right. And it's because of that we can speak with correct pronunciation. Like if you take someone who goes deaf later in life, within 5 years they sound funny when they talk because so much of like maintaining good pronunciation revolves around a feedback loop of you hearing yourself speak, you comparing that to how it's supposed to sound, and then you making adjustments.
Okay.
And so if you don't have that internal model of what Japanese is supposed to sound, then no work you're going to do is going to have any true effect. And the only way to get that internal model of what it's supposed to sound like is from mass input and learning to understand it.
Okay.
Because as you learn to understand it more and more, you'll naturally build a more and more subtle interlanguage in your unconscious. And so that's why I just think like if someone's correcting you, that's just like you're a blind person and you're trying to learn how to draw, and so you get a tutor to help you be like, oh no, it looks more like this. It's like if you're fucking blind, you're not going to be able to draw. And so if you don't have that sense of what Japanese is supposed to sound like, no tutor is going to be able to help you.
I know what you're saying because it's the same thing. Like they say no, it's ikura. No, ikura. No, ikura. It's ikura. No, because you don't hear that they're you don't know the differences.
and if you don't hear it, you don't have a shot in hell because it's way too subtle to work with.
Hence the idea of me making that fun, not confidence course, but challenge course of hey, okay, here's 3 different. Like I explained earlier, I'll create something like that, and I think that would be more fun. You know, hey, can you tell the difference? Okay, these are obviously the same word, not the same words. These are different pronunciations, so they're different words.
Yeah, well, I think doing practice with minimal pairs could actually be pretty useful because you're actually training an ability, because you're training your ability to hear the difference, right?
Yep.
That's different than trying to train your ability to produce the difference. It's totally different.
Cool. All right. I'll keep an eye out for that. But again, that'll be later. That'll take some effort. And like I said, hey, I need to find ways to reward people who want to support me on Patreon for all the weird shit I make. Like I don't know, I don't know if you use any material I've ever put out online. But a lot of people have. Like the Core 2000, 6000 deck on Anki, or the Tae Kim deck, that was downloaded like 25,000 times before that purge happened. And, you know, but I didn't know how many people completed it. Like at least with Memrise, when 4,000 people subscribe to the course, but at least I know 500 people have started to complete at least the beginning parts of it. And then that slowly tapers off near the end. And at least take pride in knowing people are at least getting some benefit from the stuff I put out there. And for me, as a educator, that's fun. But now I have to get back to the reality. I need to get good in Japanese, and I can't be spending a lot of time making teaching material. I've got to make material for myself. I'll save
and
it.
I would also say, try to not go on Reddit, because that can eat up a lot of time. Like if you're arguing with people, because I see you every time my video gets posted. I go look through. You're always in the comments there, so I know, and I see them in a lot of. Whenever I get posted anything, whenever I got linked anything from Learn Japanese, you're always in the comments. So I know you must be spending a lot of time on there. That's a big.
Now here's the thing, though. Part of it was I'm pimping my my program.
Yeah. So I get that. Like now, after you explained to me how your kind of stance, it did make more sense. But now that you're saying I need to get good, like maybe if you think about getting good as like part of helping other people, because the better you are, the more people will trust you, the more people use your products, the more people will benefit.
No, yeah.
So
because again, I've told you before, it's embarrassing that I've got people who are fluent in Japanese who are saying, "Oh man, I used your stuff back in the day, man. You must be super awesome by now." It's like, nope, and that's embarrassing. So now I want to. Plus, and like I said, there are, because of my security clearance levels, my training in the military, I would get access to jobs that having a much higher level in Japanese, it actually gives me access to those jobs that normally would only be going to native level. Because like I said, there's some benefit to being, if you're a fluent speaking American who can speak Japanese fluently, there are jobs available, decent paying jobs as well. So there is a payoff there. It just that to get to that level, you have to invest a lot of time, and here we go. And like I said, I'm realizing, hey, I need to get myself up there. And like I said, and thank you again for what you're doing, because that re-encouraged, that lit that fire that had just been, relit the fire that had just been smoldering for like years.
I'm glad.
All right, so thank you all very much. And again, I'll say, anything final words there, Matt, before?
I don't think so.
All right, and like I said, you got full access to this video. I'm going to stop this here, so it'll be 50 minutes, whatever. If you want to use it for anything, there's probably not much you can grab from it, but it's free for you to use as you see fit.
Cool.
Okay, thank you all very much. This is Nuke Marine and Matt from Matt versus Japan, and signing off. Thank you.